Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video.
It didn't take me long to find a place with things I could make use of. Luckily, I was in a school dedicated to science and technology, and I soon found a room dedicated to engineering that was full of things like robot arms, half-built computers, and something that looked like a laser gun that had married a video game console. Everything was placed on the various tables and counters in haphazard ways, which made sense since any students that had been in there had evacuated out before they could put away their projects. I didn't stop to admire them. I entered the room as Fast Track and tapped the Omnitrix. I didn't call out when I changed, the need to be silent overriding the habit. Something interesting happened when I turned into the tiny form of Jury Rig this time. As I looked around at all the half-finished projects, I could see all the love and care that had been put into them. Someone had clearly tried to build something beautiful with that robotic arm, something that could replace prosthetics. That computer over there had a chip more advanced than anything on the market, but I could see it was made for video games. It was a passion project, not just a school assignment. Most of what I could see was made by people who loved creating things. So I hopped onto the table and patted the robotic arm affectionately. Then I ignored it, and all the others. Instead, I ran to a shelf full of parts and tore into it, metal shelf included. A calculator had been left on the floor, so I grabbed that too. Disassemble. I coughed a moment later. Disassemble, I whispered, this time. Hopefully there were no Hydra nearby to hear that first cry. I focused on my work, going through the various objects before finally finishing my first device. Considering the time crunch, I'd been forced to make something less ornate than I would have wanted, just something similar in shape to the Stargate from, well, Stargate. I raised the ring up in my red claws and adjusted it a bit. X, I whispered. You connected? Yes, sir, he replied. Good. I'm about to activate this teleportation jammer. It'll work, but I want to see if the range is what I'm hoping for.
I thought you were going to ask me to self-destruct.
I blinked in shock. What? It is the common next step in fictional stories when a computer gains sentience despite the creator's wishes. In order to assuage any fears you may have, please know I am ready to self-terminate. I do not wish for you to be in trouble for my creation, nor to lead you to fear that I will hurt you or others. To that, I could only shake my head. What kind of angsty X? Those stories are bullshit. If you want, we can discuss it in full later, but know that I trust you. If it helps, focus on Data from Star Trek or Ket from Knight Rider. Then you'll know why I'm not worried. For now, we've got work to do, buddy. I felt like I'd been very abrupt, but the idea I couldn't trust X was ridiculous. Maybe, if I'd been human, I'd have been nicer. As Jury Rig, I knew him more than anyone else I'd ever meet. The question of his loyalty was ridiculous. Understood, sir, he said over the comms. With that, I activated the ring. The center of the ring ejected several panels that changed the ring into a round disc, closing the iris. I can read the range of effects, sir, X said. It covers every bit of the school. I tweaked the device a bit. It is extended a yard. How far can you have the range of your device cover? Not as much as I wish, I admitted, but it will be enough to prevent easy access to the school and defend the rendezvous when we get there. Placing the iris device on my waist, I made one more device before I was finished. I reached for the Omnitrix and changed into Fast Track, the devices I'd made resting on my hips. I ran for the room, then took a detour to hide one of the devices I'd made, a just-in-case measure. This is Dial. I've finished the device. When they try to teleport in, they'll just bounce back to where they came from now. Good, Natasha said. Come back, we're going to need you. I'm already here, I said, coming to a stop next to her an instant later. Thomas and his guys pointed their guns at me, but Natasha held her hand up to stop them and nodded. They were a few rooms from the lecture area that Hydra had taken as a beachhead if they hadn't moved on. More SHIELD agents stood with us ready to move in, with some downstairs. All right, let's move in, Natasha said. Dial, take out as many as you can while we move in. 3, 2. I leaned into a sprinting position. I was gone in an instant. I entered the room and looked around. The Hydra soldiers seemed confused as to why no more of their people were teleporting in. Apparently, they'd been hoping for more numbers before going on the attack, but there were only about 40 in the room now. Some were floating in the air in their armor like discount Iron Men. I leaped towards one at super speed, smashing my feet into his chest as he floated there. I pushed off from him to jump towards another guy, twisting in the air to punch him in the face. As soon as I hit the ground, I was running again. Hydra realized there was someone in their midst and tried to aim at me, but Fast Track was way too fast. I ducked around a purple bolt by dropping into a slide, then popped up for a blisteringly fast uppercut that sent a guy backflipping to smash into a wall. I did a back kick into another guy's knee, shattering his leg, then ran to a man who was taking off. He tried to shoot me, and I was forced to spin around the purple energy bolt. As soon as I was safe, I leaped up and grabbed him as he tried to fly away, pulling him down before spinning around 10 times and throwing him at his friends. At the same time, S.H.I.E.L.D. rushed into the room through the upper and lower doors. They charged in, weapons raised, yelling for surrender. That's when the woman who looked like Michelle Rodriguez acted. Her eyes began to glow a bright red, which could not be a good sign. She looked at the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents that had entered through the lower floor. They started staring at her with uncomfortably lustful eyes. Then they pointed their guns at the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents on the higher level and started shooting. "Down," Thomas yelled, ducking behind some desks. "What the hell are they doing?" "Dial, get their guns," Natasha yelled, shooting a Hydra agent in the head before her cover was blown apart by a purple beam, forcing her to switch to a different section. I had a moment of shock before I ran towards the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. I passed through their ranks 3 times, grabbing their guns and piling them in my arms before running upstairs to drop them next to Thomas and his men. I looked at the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, who blinked at their now empty hands before they pulled out handguns. I was going to run and pull those out of their hands as well when the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents held their guns to their heads. "Stop," Michelle Rodriguez's double shouted. The room froze for a moment. Natasha looked at her and cursed. "Der Vader." "Hey, Nat," the woman said casually. The S.H.I.E.L.D. agents below, still holding guns to their heads, moved to join the Hydra soldiers. "You look good." "So do you," Natasha said casually, pointing her gun at the Hydra soldiers. "That's a new trick." She nodded towards the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents currently threatening to kill themselves. The woman, Davida the first guess, scowled but nodded. "It's something Hydra gave me. I don't like using it, but I have my orders. Invade the academy and take the students." "You're Hydra?" Natasha asked. "I'm hired by them," Davida corrected. "Natasha," Thomas asked as I watched alongside him. "Who is she?" Davida smirked. "Someone you love." Her eyes flashed red, which could not have been good. Damn it, Natasha attempted to fire her weapon. But by then I was already in love with Davida. Why shouldn't I be? I'd always loved her. I'd only met her moments ago, but she was just so perfect. Everything about her, from her raven hair to the way her leather jacket and blue jeans hugged her form. That was when I saw Natasha pulling the trigger and acted before she could. With Fast Track's speed, I kicked Natasha in the side. Not enough to break her ribs, but enough to push her to the floor. As she landed, Thomas and the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents grabbed at Natasha. She rolled to her feet, jammed an elbow into a soldier, trying to wrap his arms around her, then kicked Thomas in the thigh when he tried to punch her. She leaped over a desk to escape another S.H.I.E.L.D. agent's grasp. Then I grabbed her by her hair and pulled until she was bent backward. Natasha struggled against my enhanced strength for a moment, then tossed a taser onto my chest. I screamed, letting go of her. Natasha spun away, then rolled when purple bolts and bullets aimed at her. Desperate to please my love, I ran towards her. Natasha got up to confront me, but she was far too slow. I was already. The Omnitrix timed out. I came to a stop in front of Natasha, who grabbed me by the shoulder and twisted around to throw me out the door behind her, the both of us getting out before bullets and purple beams passed through the air where we were once standing. Snap out of it, Natasha yelled at me, slamming my face into a wall. I already did, I yelled back. Natasha pressed me harder into the wall. Wait, what? I have a different brain now. Pretty sure changing cures mind control, I yelled again. Although I was confused. I had been certain that the Omnitrix protected against that sort of thing, or maybe Davida's powers could overcome that somehow. That's useful, Natasha said. A whistle came from downstairs. We looked down the stairs and I groaned. Ah, shit. Davida was down the hall. She smirked up at us, then looked at me before her eyes glowed red. You Titanic bitch. I had time to mumble. Then I was in love again. But this time Natasha was ready. She grabbed the Omnitrix the second it turned green, twisted the dial, and slammed down on it before flipping away. I grew several feet. Orange and black striped fur grew across my body. I roared, a massive blast of noise that felt like freedom. Wrath. Behind me, shield agents stormed out to start shooting at me. I ignored the bullets bouncing off my skin with ease. Let me tell you something, Davida, who is working for Hydra, I yelled, grabbing a shield agent's gun and snapping it over my knee before gently headbutting another. Wrath doesn't like getting mind-controlled. Only Wrath can tell Wrath's brain what to do. I got in the way of bullets that would have hit Natasha. She grabbed my head and flipped over me to kick the guy who shot at her, then springboarded off my back to kick another guy. Wrath's mind is like a black hole that reflects light. I roared, then sliced a gun in half with my claw before grabbing a Hydra soldier that had come out of the room to throw him over Natasha, as fought two other men. That's not how black holes work, Black Widow pointed out. Natasha grabbed another agent as he walked out and spun him to slam into a wall. I will protect my love, Tomas, yelling desperately, swung a metal baton surrounded by electricity, pressing it against me. I looked down at the baton, sending a weak charge through my skin that left me wincing slightly, then grabbed it out of Tomas's hands and snapped it in half. That's when Davida had made it up the steps. She ran towards me with her soldiers hovering behind her and punched me in the face. To my shock, her fist sent me through the window behind me, sending me flying through the air with the loud sound of glass shattering. I fell into the courtyard below and Davida followed, landing on my chest as the concrete below cracked under my landing. She looked into my eyes, smirking as they flashed red. You love me, she purred softly, don't you? I stilled, locking my eyes onto her beautiful face. Wrath loves you. Then I punched her in the chest. She let out a startled shout, flying back 20 feet and smashing through a pillar. Natasha Romanov, Black Widow. Natasha spared a glance when a massive noise was followed by Davida flying back from a punch thrown by Wrath. Guess he's immune? She ducked a punch thrown by one of the shield agents and focused on the task at hand. She grabbed the arm of the man who'd tried to punch and elbowed him in the chest with a vicious and quick strike. Then she ran. Bullets and purple beams flew towards her as she entered a door and ran through a classroom. This is Black Widow, she shouted over the noise. Shield agents have been compromised by a mind manipulator. Ma'am, Axe said over the comms. I can see you on the school's cameras. I can mark any shield agents that have been affected by Davida DeVito's powers if you wish. I can use the Hercules app. Do it, Natasha yelled, rolling under a desk when another purple beam sizzled through the air to pass her. But I'm taking them out before that. In that case, Dial made sure to leave a non-lethal weapon nearby, in case he needed it, X said, surprising Natasha. Run down the hall, then enter the room on your left, the supply closet. He left a weapon for me, Natasha asked, sprinting at full speed before seeing the supply closet. She entered it and looked around. He left it for himself, X noted, a cautionary measure he did on a whim. It's installed with the Hercules app so that any Hydra using it would have it explode in their faces. A flash bang. Natasha sighed. I have no idea if I should commend him or be angry at him. She saw the device instantly. It looked like some sort of ray gun from an old sci-fi movie. Natasha grabbed it and looked it over. Any idea how to use it? Point and pull the trigger. What a time for the robot to discover sarcasm, Natasha said with a sigh. She left the room, holding the ray gun in a single hand. She took her time, listening closely to the area around her. After a moment of walking through the silent halls, she heard footsteps. Soon 3 shield soldiers and a pair of Hydra flyers turned the corner. As soon as she saw them, she shot the gun in her hands. A strange green projectile shaped like a ball, surrounded in a green ring, slammed into one of the shield soldiers, lifting him up and tossing him back. Natasha fired again, taking out one of the Hydra flyers. As the flyer fell out of the air, the other 3 men started shooting. But Natasha ducked aside into a bathroom. The soldiers rushed after her, entering a small side hallway. It was empty. For a moment, the 3 men looked around the small hallway in confusion, walked into the hallway. "Hey, boys," someone said, prompting the 3 to look up. Natasha had a smirk on her face as she held herself against the ceiling with her feet and hands against the walls to apply pressure and keep her in place, pointed her ray gun downwards. 3 loud shots rang out, followed by 3 bodies hitting the floor. Natasha dropped to the floor and went around the corner. Thomas stood there, looking surprised as they almost bumped into her. He swung a fist at Natasha, but she ducked it to gut-punch Thomas. He fell back, then received a kick in the head that brought him to the ground. Thomas went to rise up, but Natasha shot him in the chest, knocking him unconscious. "Well, just a few more to go," Natasha mused to herself. Mahmoud Shahad Dial. I rose to my feet and growled when 7 Hydra soldiers floated out of the window. I'd broken to start shooting at me. "Let me tell you something, stupid Hydra Iron Man knockoffs," I roared as they shot at me. "Dumb purple beams aren't enough to stop true love." I leaped up, trying to pull one down so I could probably beat his face in, but he rose out of the way. "Stand still so Wrath can beat you up, and present your broken bodies to Wrath's beloved." To my frustration, they responded by shooting me in the face and chest with bright beams of purple light. "All right, that's it. Now Wrath's going to have to improvise because Wrath left his giant fly swatter at home." I took a page out of Creel's playbook and ran to a vending machine, grabbing and tossing it with great speed. Haley's flight. The Hydra soldier I threw it at tried to dodge, but fell out of the sky when the vending machine full of candy bars and gummy bears slammed into his legs, shattering them. I grabbed another one, but Hydra separated to make it hard for me to aim. I roared. Then a hail of bullets came out of the sky. They hit one of the Hydra men, shooting me, sending him to the floor in a pool of blood. "Hey, kid!" Rhodey flew over to me, firing 2 repulsor beams. "These the guys?"
Yeah?
I yelled happily. At the same time, Davida rose up from the remains of the pillar I'd sent her through and started striding towards us. "And that's the woman Wrath loves." Rhodey looked at me through the face mask of his helmet. "Wait, what?" "Hey, shoot her!" I yelled. "Wrath wants to see if she's bulletproof." "You need to work on your romance," Rhodey mumbled. Then his minigun spun around and shot at Davida. She walked through the hail of bullets, letting them bounce off her skin with no effect. Her leather jacket was torn to pieces, her tank top and jeans were ripped, but her face was unchanged. Then she started to grow. Slowly, she rose in height and weight until she was only an inch shorter than I was. Her body expanding with muscle, growing denser in general. Her jeans and tank top stretched as well, but held strong despite her growth, leaving her looking kinda badass. She looked over at Rhodey with a familiar smirk. I moved in front of him and smiled at her, not affected when her red eyes hit me. After all, I already loved her. "You take Hydra," I said. "Seriously, what is going on?" Rhodey asked as he rose up to start dogfighting the Hydra soldiers now trying to kill him, dodging their purple beams to fire his repulsors. "Let me tell you something, War Machine," I yelled joyfully, rushing towards the now massive Davida, who raised her fists up. "Wrath's about to ask her to marry Wrath. If you're lucky, Wrath might just ask you to be Wrath's best man." Davida dodged around my charge, then grabbed me by the waist and spun to throw me through a wall. I crashed through the concrete and landed in a classroom. She ran after me, punching at my face as I rose up, but I blocked her fist on my arm. I clawed at her face, and she winced as the razor-sharp weapon on my fist bounced off her chin, though it did leave a small cut in the process. I grabbed her by the shoulders and headbutted her. Vida a deafened headbutt. She took the blow, then returned it with a headbutt of her own. With that, we began punching each other, our massive forms tearing through the school. Colonel James Rhodey Rhodes' war machine. Rhodey shook his head as he watched the giant tiger and woman throw themselves into the school. I miss normal sometimes, Rhodey said to himself. Then he was flying after a Hydra soldier. The man tried to shot Rhodey as the pair flew in the air, but Rhodey dived around the glowing purple and fired a single repulsor blast into the other man's chest. As though signaled by the death of the first soldier, other Hydra came out of the building. All Quinjets. Rhodey yelled as he fired the machine guns on his arms and shoulder at the dozens of men rising into the sky. Prepared to engage hostiles, ones in power armor. Roger that, war machine. Several aircraft spun to face the school. Rhodey dived into the Hydra flyers and smashed one in the chest with a hard kick, spinning to shoot another one with a repulsor blast as his minigun aimed fire at several more, hitting one in the legs and another in the chest. A Hydra agent flew into Rhodey's back and held on, shooting him in the back with his gauntlet weapon. War Machine yelled in pain as his HUD sent him warnings and spun in the air to throw the guy off him before his minigun spun around to kill the man. War Machine rose up and fired off repulsor blasts and bullets as fast as he could. Hydra soldiers spun around in the skies and tried killing him, their purple beams sometimes slamming into him. Rhodey grunted as he took a couple hits to the chest that scared his armor, but thanked God for Tony when the suit held strong. The Quinjets joined in and started shooting as well. Some of the Hydra flyers swarmed one of the Quinjets, their gauntlet fire tearing the aircraft apart. Rhodey dived down suddenly when he saw a group of Hydra flyers trying to get to the parking lot. He went under a bridge while shooting one in the back with a repulsor, stopped to grab one by the leg and spin the Hydra flyer around to throw him at a stone bench, then flew forward shooting with every bullet he had. The men in the parking lot that had been turned into an evacuation point saw the Hydra flyers coming towards them and began firing upon them. Bullets and purple beams flew back and forth between the two groups. Rhodey joined in, shooting at the Hydra soldiers. One of them flew at Rhodey, screaming, "One head falls, two shall rise." Rhodey blocked the punch the Hydra soldier threw at him, then fired a hail of bullets into the chest of the man, the Hydra flyer's armor shattering under the bullets before he fell. "Guess I should take out two more," War Machine quipped. With that, he raised his arms and kept shooting, sparing a moment to wonder what the massive booming noises behind him were. Mahmoud Shahad Dadial. "You're good at this," I complimented, hoping she liked me as much as I liked her. Steady and reversal. With a twist of my hips, I threw her to the ground and started punching her in the face. She took a bunch of blows that shattered the floor under her, then raised her legs up and kicked me in the chest. I flew up and crashed through the ceiling. She leaped up after me through the hole I'd made, punching me in the face. "Yes," I roared in joy. "Wrath knew you liked wrath." "Are you a masochist?" Davida replied, giving me a kick to the ribs that sent me flying through some desks.
Wrath doesn't know what that means,
I replied honestly, rising up as she ran towards me. I punched at her, and her fist smashed into mine. A shockwave was released by impact, destroying the area around us. Wrath would be honored if you married Wrath. "There is something wrong with you," she yelled, stepping back. "We're all crazy when we're in love." Davida dropped low and wrapped her arms around my waist, pushing me back and slamming me into a wall. Then through it, I raised my arms up and slammed my claws into her ribs and back, over and over again. She yelled in anger, lifted up and pushed me through another wall. I backflipped as soon as I was through that wall and rose to look at her. "Damn it." Davida grabbed a teacher's desk and threw it at me. I punched it out of the air, ignoring the shattered pieces with ease. "You're supposed to be in love with me. Why are you fighting?" "To prove Wrath's love. How else would Wrath do that?" I shouted back with a grin. I leaped forward and she did the one thing that could have made me like her even more. She slipped under my attack, grabbed my waist, then bent backwards to slam me into a suplex that sent me down through the floor. I landed on the next floor with a massive smile on my face. "You're a wrestler." Davida dropped through the floor and glared at me. "So, let me tell you something, pretty lady who looks like Michelle Rodriguez but is as big as me." I rolled to my feet and rushed her. "It means Wrath can fight for real." Davida's Michelle Rodriguez face twisted into horror when I reached out and grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back. Entarian arm bar. I sprinted forward with her in front of me, slamming her through a wall, then pressing her face into another one. Ophiuchus face plant, she yelled, twisting to throw me down the hallway we'd crashed into. I grabbed her arm to try and flip her, but she pulled a perfect counter to send me flying instead. I backflipped in the air and slammed my claws into the floor, slicing through the linoleum to come to a stop. Davida grabbed a water fountain out of the wall and threw it at me. I took the blow to my head and let the metal and plastic shatter around me. I ran towards her and slipped around a punch to go for a suplex. She countered by dropping from the grab before I could complete it, spinning to slam an elbow into my neck. I eyed her, trying to look unfazed by the blow. Then I pointed at the spot she'd hit. "Wanna try again?" Davida's eyes widened. Then she grinned. Boom! I grinned as she stepped back, the shockwave that followed her hit sending a crack of noise in the air. She stood still when I stepped forward and swung my elbow at her. Boom! She smiled in challenge, not moving an inch. Boom, 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 boom. Back and forth. In a game of dominance, we slammed our elbows into each other's necks, chaining our attacks as we grinned at each other. After a bit, we stepped back. My neck hurt like hell, but I didn't react to it. Neither did she. I rushed forward with a running knee, and she stepped aside and clotheslined me. I slammed into the floor and rolled aside when she came with an elbow drop. I rose to my feet and grabbed her as she tried to rise up from the floor. At a disadvantage, I got her head between my knees, squeezing, then grabbed her hips. With a lift, I raised her up so her legs were on my shoulder, then began to throw her back first towards the floor. Portia Power bowed. Her legs wrapped around my neck. She spun around, pulling me with all her strength. Titania Hurricanrana. With a picture-perfect counter, I was sent flying, slamming into a trophy case, past that through another wall, then into a desk. I blinked for a second, then rose up and walked towards the hole my entrance made. Davida stared at me as I walked up. "Titania like the moon?" I asked. She shook her head, panting. "No, it was my name when I wrestled." I nodded seriously, then groaned slightly in pain. She was strong, stronger than even Creel in his vibranium form, but I knew I could beat him even then, that only the Omnitrix timing out had stopped me. Wrath was unbeatable, and I knew I could beat her now, bruises or not. Wrath had to prove he truly loved her after all. I ran at her, and Davida tried to duck my outstretched arms, but I grabbed her by the hair and used my vicious grip to knee her in the face, over and over, until blood dripped from her nose. As she looked at me blearily, I got behind her and wrapped arms around her stomach. Finishing move. One suplex. Final. Another one, this time shaking the academy. Atomic. I leaped upwards, crashing through 3 floors before we ended up outside of the school, in the open air. I could see Quinjets battling Hydra soldiers, War Machine flying by to shoot one in the face. Then we began to drop. Buster, floor by floor, Davida's head leading, we crashed through the school. Finally, we came to a stop on the bottom level. I rose up and looked down at Davide. As I watched, she slowly began to shrink until she'd returned to her former size. When she didn't move, I took her pulse, actually showing a bit of intelligence beyond fighting. Her heartbeat was there, she was just knocked out. Wrath wins. "When you wake up, we should get married," I said idly. "Although if you say otherwise, Wrath will respect your decision." Feeling warm towards the love of my life, I placed her on my shoulder and walked away, leaving the various holes in the ceiling and the crater we'd created behind. When I got outside, there were dead or injured Hydra everywhere. A few of them had been captured, however, getting pushed into a Quinjet. 2 of the Quinjets had been downed, but I didn't see more than a fraction of dead SHIELD soldiers compared to Hydra. Natasha was speaking to an embarrassed-looking Thomas when I walked up, still in Wrath form. Thomas glared at Davida, who was still unconscious on my shoulder. "She dead?" he asked angrily. I shook my head. "No, just sleeping off the beating Wrath gave her." He scoffed. "She deserves a bullet in the head. I don't know what she did, but I don't like having my mind played with." Davida DeVito, Natasha said with a sigh, and enhanced with the power to grow in size and strength. Making people fall in love with her is new, though. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone in there with so many. Natasha looked at me. Do her powers not work on you? Are you licensed to do marriages? I asked suddenly, instead of answering, focusing on the real issue. Natasha and Thomas stared at me, surprised. No, I am not. I wilted in disappointment. Hold on, Thomas said. If you're in love with her, why did you still fight her? I scoffed. Let me tell you something, Agent Thomas Calderon of S.H.I.E.L.D. Apoplexians like Wrath know the best way to show true love is to show off your fighting skills. Throwing a punch is how we show we care. Whoever wins gets to marry the other one. Wait, you mean you get married no matter who wins? Natasha asked, looking confused. It's a win-win, I shouted proudly. Then I got worried. Unless she says no, then Wrath will be respectful. Right about then is when I timed out and became human again. I dropped Davida in surprise and blinked. I looked around. S.H.I.E.L.D. agents were staring at me. A couple were trying not to laugh and failing outright. Rhodey was floating nearby, his faceplate up so he could grin at me. Well, that's embarrassing, I stated. Understatement of the freaking century. Wrath, why do you cause as many problems as your fists solve? Natasha grinned at that. I can't wait to tell Tony about this. Yup. Any respect I'd gained from my fellow heroes had gone down the drain. I sighed and decided to start finding a nice place to dig a hole for me to live in. Thank you so much, Jennifer Weaver said as her students ran out of the school to head to Quinjet's moments later. Davida had been placed in a cryo unit I'd turned into jury rig to make. Suspended animation until we could jail her someplace she couldn't physically break out of. Not a problem, Thomas said, a band-aid on his head from where Natasha had apparently kicked him while he'd been in love. Is this everyone? Thomas said, ushering the students into the Quinjets. Almost. The grateful look on Weaver's face became a scowl. All the members of Hydra are going last. I'm not putting them together with the others. Despite her anger, there was some sadness in her eyes. Thomas nodded, though he also had a sad look on his face as he watched some of his men get put in body bags. I watched from a bench nearby, Rhodey standing next to me. Man, that was a lot crazier than I expected, I admitted to Rhodey. Yeah, he said. I haven't had a routine mission since the day I put this thing on, to be honest, and my adventures still aren't that crazy. Sometimes I try to tell Tony about some crazy mission, and it's like he's trying to stay awake. Well, you did just fight a small army of Hydra soldiers while flying around Quinjets over a school of geniuses, while a giant tiger and giant woman fought inside of it, I noted. That has to earn a few points. Nah, pretty sure the Battle of New York still beats that, Natasha said, walking up to join us. Rhodey nodded in annoyance, though he clearly didn't mind that much. So what now? We go back to the helicarrier, Natasha said. You going to join us? I should report to my superiors, but I can do that at the carrier, Rhodey said. I'm still needed in this fight if you all will have me. Well, it's not up to me, I noted, rising from my seat, but it's good to have you here. So, I pressed on the Omnitrix and pressed on the dial. Upgrade. Standing up, I looked at Rhodey and Natasha. Want to fly back in style? I asked. The pair shared a look. Natasha grinned. You just want to distract us from telling Tony anything, don't you? Natasha said. Do you want to fly in an upgraded Quinjet or not, jerks? I turned and walked away as Rhodey chuckled. Moments later, my black and green form was joined up with our Quinjet as we rocketed through the sky. I did a roll while Rhodey whopped in joy and Natasha smirked, the two piloting me back to the helicarrier. Hey, Natasha asked suddenly as we flew. How many environments can you survive in? I blinked a singular green eye. What sort do you want me to survive in? Natasha pulled on the controls, guiding me to downwards. Curious, I went where she told me to. Natasha? Rhodey asked. There was nothing but blue ocean below us. Natasha had that confident smirk on her face as she pushed me to go faster until I broke the sound barrier, not letting up on our downward course at all. Natasha! Rhodey yelled in a panic. We slammed into the ocean. My surface adjusted to the impact with ease as we dived further and further down into the cold water. I took my radar and sensors and adjusted them for the ocean while turning my HUD into something that would allow Natasha and Rhodey to see in the dark of the sea as though it was lit by a Hollywood movie crew. "Wow," Rhodey said in awe. The bottom of the ocean soon came into view. Still flying at hypersonic speed, I took us to the nearest objects my radar could find. I slowed down and floated upwards. When we came closer to the objects I sensed drifting through the waves. Soon we were in view. A pod of orca whales drifted through the ocean, incredibly massive animals that glided in the water as I flew in to join them. The beautiful animals eyed us as I swam alongside them, the sounds of their clicks surrounding them. Their black and white forms seemed to glide with a grace that left me in awe. The three of us watched for a moment. Rhodey rested his elbows on my dashboard, while Natasha rested in her seat and let me pilot myself for a bit. Soon, though, I decided to look for something else, thanks to a wish to fulfill an old dream of mine. With a bit of regret, I turned around, leaving the orcas behind. I headed towards coordinates after doing a quick Google search, moving through the ocean faster than the world's top fighter jets. It didn't long for me to get where I was headed. "Mahmoud," Natasha said. I've always wanted to see this," I said. "What?" Rhodey asked. "You find Atlantis or something?" I chuckled at that. "No, but we're in the North Atlantic, and according to my GPS, this should be off the coast of Newfoundland at the right coordinates. I'll admit, maybe it's kind of stereotypical of me to think, hey, I can swim to the bottom of the ocean at high speed, I want to go to sea." I trailed off when it came into view. A ship, resting on the bottom of the ocean. Well, the front of one. It was brown and rusted, and cracked in various locations. The part where it had torn from its back section looked squashed, as though a giant had pulled it until it snapped. A metal pole rested across the top of it. Despite the decrepit look of the wreck, it had a sort of majesty to it. You could see the remnants of the great ship it had once been. The Quinjet being positively tiny next to it helped. "Okay, that is cool," Rhodey said, looking closer. "That's," Natasha added softly. "The Titanic," I clarified. "I've always wanted to see her. It's been a dream of mine since I was a kid. Granted, I wasn't the submarine in my dream. While I could easily see every bit of the ship with my robotic eyes, even despite the darkness, I still shone a light across its surface, simply for how cool it looked. We flew around the ship, Rhodey taking photos on his phone, and Natasha watching peacefully. After a while, Natasha spoke. "Okay, time to go. Unless you have something else you've always wanted to see." I thought about that, then I rose up, shooting towards the surface. As we slammed into the open air, I kept going, making it clear that my only goal was up towards the sky. "Oh, come on," Rhodey groaned. "Don't tell me you want to see satellites or something." "No," I admitted, "but I want to see the curvature of the Earth. See if those flat Earth people know what they're talking about." Speaking as a former fighter pilot and current owner of flying power armor capable of going up that high, I guarantee you they aren't, Rhodey said in the dry tones of the severely offended. Passing the clouds, we were soon high enough that blue sky became black night. My rockets glowed green, pushing me through the atmosphere. The rotors in my wings twisted into engines similar to those one would see on fighter jets. Soon, we were out of the atmosphere, in the middle of true space. From there, I turned us around. I could see the Earth's beauty below. I could sense satellites in the distance. The sun glowed with enough power to blind a person without protection, which made me glad I'd prepared for that by polarizing the window for Rhodey and Natasha. And I could sense the moon in the distance. Reaching my senses out until they were far more powerful than anything on Earth, I found what I was looking for. They were hiding pretty well, but they were there. I hid away that confirmation. Instead, I focused on the view, on the sight of the clouds on the planet below, on the sun, burning so beautifully, and the place beyond all that. My senses became telescopes, and I showed Rhodey and Natasha close-up views of the other planets. None of us said anything. We simply watched the wonder around us in peace. After a moment, we twisted back towards the Earth. I didn't know what to think. The things we had seen, Few people on Earth had seen either the Titanic in its final resting place on the bottom of the ocean or the deep of space with the Earth rolling beneath them. I couldn't imagine many who had ever seen both. Somehow it felt like a privilege, something I had to earn now. Thanks, Natasha said. I never thought I would see things like that. Me either, I admitted. I wish we had time. With aliens around, there are planets to visit, people we could talk to. There is so much to do out there. Earth isn't good enough for you, Rhodey asked jokingly. I barked out a laugh. No, of course it is. Our planet is hands down the best, man. We created the telephone. Pretty sure other aliens have the telephone too, Natasha noted. Well, we also made Cinnabon though, I joked. So what? Rhodey asked. You eager to see the aliens your watch turns you into? Flying as the Quinjet, I felt glad I could hide my reaction. I mean, I'll be honest, Rhodey said. I would not like to fight an entire species that can turn helicarriers into their own personal death machines, or unstoppable monsters like Wrath or Diamond Head. I didn't answer. Natasha clearly noticed my lack of reaction, but I simply flew towards the helicarrier. It might be time to give explanations to the group. Maybe not right that second, but after I'd had a moment to think. So Rhodey tells me you cheated on him with a giant woman, Tony said, a grin as soon as he saw me on the catwalk, staring down at the ocean. He walked up and sat next to me. I mean, what? You two join bodies 1 second, then you're hitting on someone else the next. You promiscuous bastard. First off, I said with a scowl, you of all people, calling me promiscuous. He's devastated, Tony said, still grinning. I mean, you two were once one body, one soul, then a red-eyed tart comes along. I've read the tabloids. I'm pretty sure not a single supermodel on Earth hasn't at least heard a crappy pickup line from you. I know you're young, but love like the one Rhodey and you share only comes... Wait, did you call my pickup lines crappy? Kid, I've been with more women than you've ever stared longingly at. We were arguing in the room that had now become the hangout on the ship, some place that had once been the clear dome on the bottom of the helicarrier. We stood on the catwalk that led to the tower in the center of the room. After a moment, we both ran out of insults, simply staring at the ocean below. Rhodey said, "You wanted to talk to me about something?" Tony asked. I mean, I generally ignore requests, but if you put one in with Happy... I snorted. It's about you replicating Upgrade. It's about X. It's about a million things. Hamph. Tony moved to sit on the catwalk, letting his legs dangle in the air. Well, that's a lot. You want to start with how X is an AI? When I gave him a surprised look, he smirked. Come on. Who are you talking to? Of course. I knew. I figured out he'd evolved almost immediately. Is that possible? I asked. For an AI to develop in a single day? Depends on the AI, Tony said. I've been trying to make something like that myself to run certain projects. Tony waved for me to sit down. Once I'd done so, he spoke again. Okay, so here's the thing. I want to bring you in on some projects me and a friend have been working on. Usually you would be too dumb for me to even mention it. I do my best, I said, offended. Losers whine about their best, Tony said without skipping a beat. Anyways, where was I? Oh, right. Your watch is the most advanced thing I've seen, hands down. And Jury Rig can make some unbelievable things out of literal junk. But if we worked together, he removed one of the communications devices we'd made from his ear and held it out. This thing is going to revolutionize how we talk to people, kid. I mean quantum entanglement. The ability to talk to someone who is across the universe instantly. No worrying about lag or things like light speed. Once we figure out how to make these without jury rig and mass produce it, it'll change the world. I leaned against the metal railing, swinging my legs as I watched him put it away. You use that watch to turn into mad geniuses. I help you make cool toys, you help me do the same, and I'll pay you. How's that sound? What about S.H.I.E.L.D.? I asked. What? You want to work for them too? Tony asked. Sure, we'll throw it in the contract. Just no sharing anything you make for me with them, not without them paying us a shit ton. Deal? I thought about that for a moment, working with whatever S.H.I.E.L.D. was going to become. making money by creating things with Tony freaking Stark. That sounded awesome. I'm in, I said. But one thing, we do everything, and I mean everything, to make sure not to create some sort of Skynet machine. Okay? If some robot similar to Upgrade got out, we'd all be in some shit. Tony rolled his eyes. All right, fine. I'm serious, I said. I know making robots is cool, but if we do make them, let's make sure they're run by an AI we know isn't crazy, and that any we develop are on a non-networked computer, on the moon, while making sure it knows humans are friends, not fuel. He chuckled, nodding. Yeah, all right, kid. Welcome to the Stark Industries R&D department. Bruce is going to love your paranoia. Later we'd arrived at the rendezvous, sitting in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, with no land in sight for hundreds of miles, was the Iliad. It was kinda funny seeing her in the middle of the water with 2 InSight helicarriers flying over to join her. Sort of a mesh of the old and new. Quinjets and helicopters came from across the world, carrying SHIELD agents and personnel from bases everywhere. Our helicarrier was where the proceedings would take place, so I watched from on top of the command tower as people began to arrive. Tony, Steve, and Clint were with me, all dressed in casual clothes now. I'd chosen to wear a SHIELD t-shirt and sweatpants as we watched the people come onto the ship in droves. Iron Man's good mood had evaporated by now as we watched a plane with rocket engines slowly hover to land on the flight deck. The black plane, called the bus, was big enough that a parking space had to be set aside for it. I can't believe he was alive all this time, Tony said. He wasn't, I replied. You saw the same files we did. Whatever, temporarily dead, Tony spat out. Damn it, I mourned for that guy. I went to his funeral, I sent his girlfriend flowers and… Shit. Steve placed a hand on Tony's shoulder and didn't look offended when Tony shrugged it off. He has a lot to answer for, but he did sacrifice everything for the world to try and stop Loki. For that, we should give him a moment to try to explain. Explain why he lied to us. Tony shook his head. I'm not wired like that, Steve. It wasn't anything personal, Clint noted. Of course you'd say that, Tony scoffed. I sat down and watched as the bus landed. Soon the hatch in the back opened, and its occupants came out. In the center stood Philip J. Coulson, the target of Tony's ire, a man who had died but was brought back to life in a project called Tacity, one so secret I couldn't find out any specifics about it. With him were 5 other people. Leopold Fitz, a young man with curly brown hair and a mind so brilliant it left me in awe. Standing next to Gemma Simmons, a young woman with long brown hair and a mind for biology that left me just as amazed as Fitz, the 2 geniuses stood close to each other. Apparently they were together so often, people would simply call them Fitz-Simmons. Melinda May, an older Asian woman with long black hair and someone so famous in SHIELD that the personnel were constantly whispering about the legend of the cavalry. A lot of people were trying to find a way to get her with the other famous fighters of our little fleet to start some sort of tournament between them. Then there was Skye, last name not chosen. Jarvis had found information that she was actually named Mary Sue Poots, which, goddamn, no wonder she changed it. Mary Sue was bad enough to my writer's sensibilities, considering the hatred connected with that name. Poots was freaking ridiculous. She was a skilled hacker, enough for Jarvis to acknowledge her, and was a recent addition to SHIELD. Last was Antoine Triplet, a skilled operative in his own right, and interestingly, a descendant of a Howling Commando. He was a tall and extremely fit man, with a well-groomed mustache. The group seemed devastated, a sort of heavy sadness shared between them all, even the stoic-looking May. As they walked forward, I saw Sharon Carter call out to Trip, who smiled. He walked up to her and the 2 hugged in greeting. Peggy Carter's great-niece and Gabe Jones' grandson, I noted as I watched them speak. Guess it makes sense they know each other. Ha! Tony watched them meet with a complicated look on his face. So did Steve. I say it's just what we need, Clint said. We're rebuilding SHIELD. It only makes sense for the descendants of the people who made it to be there for it. Tony didn't seem to know what to think of that. Possibly thinking of his father as he watched his fellow members of the Descendants of Steve's Friends Club. We watched Coulson and his team enter the ship, Next came the crew of the Iliad, flying up on a Quinjet. Robert Gonzalez, the captain of the Iliad, was in the center of his team. He'd only brought 3 people, none of whom I recognized since I'd only checked Coulson team on Tony's behalf. One of them, a tall woman with long black hair, looked like Lucy Lawless from Xena. Warrior Princess, though, and the blonde had the same looks as the first officer from the show The Orville, one of my favorite TV shows in my world. They must have been fairly important in this universe. Jarvis, I asked, knowing he was listening over comms, tell me about the 3 people with Gonzalez. Of course, sir, Jarvis said. After a second, he spoke once more. The blonde woman is Bobby Morse, Clint said fondly. I kept from flinching as I realized I was looking at Mockingbird. Then I realized something. Ex-girlfriend? Clint looked up at me, startled. I grinned at him, as did Tony. Oh my God, Tony said with delight in his voice. 2 super spies dating? Scandalous. Glass houses, Tony, Steve noted. Yeah, like I'd live in one again, but the last one is still rubble in Malibu, Tony said, still grinning at Clint. So what, you guys met while stabbing someone at the same time? Clint sighed in annoyance. Can't you keep bothering Dial about his weird love triangle with Rhodey and a supervillainess? Oh, come on, I yelled, annoyed. I'm terrible enough with women without you guys spreading rumors. Nah, Tony said. Girls like guys with a weird sexual history. Makes them curious. Plus, can you imagine how useful some of your aliens would be for— Okay, Steve interrupted. He spun around to walk away. Not going to be part of this conversation. Hey, Natasha. Hey, Sam. We all spun to see an amused Black Widow staring at us with a very amused smirk on her face. Sam grinning madly. Catch you ladies at a bad time, Natasha teased. Can you teach me how to flirt? I asked, frustrated. So I can somehow expunge the damage Tony is doing to my romantic reputation. If anything, I'm helping, Tony smiled innocently when I glared at him. Hey, I'm just saying, some ladies might be into a guy who can turn into aliens like Upgrade. Please no, I plugged my ears in horror. For the love of God. Natasha rolled her eyes at our antics. Then she looked at me. Dial, I unplugged my ears when I saw how serious she was. We need to talk about everything. Fury sent us, Sam added. Said it was time you told us where you came from, he said apologetically. Okay, but I'm going to need some stuff for that. Moments later, I'd gathered everyone in a room that had once been dedicated to conferences. Avengers only, though. That meant Fury, Tony, Steve, Natasha, and Clint. A small group to learn something that could be earth-shattering. The 5 of them watched as I worked in jury rig form. I was creating a large ring in the center of the room, building it from one of the Hydra armors Natasha had found, a TV, and a broken Quinjet ring. It looked like something I'd seen from a kid's show once. Just a metal ring as tall as Natasha, with a bottom section attached to the floor. The armor piece stapled to the ring, literally stapled actually, and the flat-screen TV broken and attached to the bottom. Soon I was done. Fix, 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 I cried triumphantly, stepping away. Okay, so what is it? Fury asked. You'll see, I chirped. An entire machine just to tell us where you came from and got the watch? Natasha asked skeptically. And why only us? Clint added. Give him a chance to explain, Steve said. Mahmood, go ahead. One more thing, I took a deep breath, then tapped the Omnitrix. My red skin became black with green circuits and I grew far larger in an instant. Upgrade. With that, I joined with the ring. This is called the viewer, I explained, as I joined with it. I needed the Chitauri parts. Chitauri? Steve asked, startled. That's where Hydra got them from? They did look familiar, Clint noted. Yeah, I can read their code, I said. But yeah, I needed them for their power. This is going to take a lot, I said. The only way this is going to work is for a couple of minutes. I'm using the arc reactor from this helicarrier to power it, and I need to be upgraded to even work with that. I can't do it for long either. This thing is basically thinning the walls between universes just for a glimpse. You're really not making this clear, Fury said. Are you about to break my ship? No, I said. The fact is, I've tried this before. Shut down the power in my burrow for 3 days and only got static. But with the big arc reactor, my new experience and upgrade all working together, I won't keep it up for long and this thing will implode on itself afterwards. But it will be enough for me to show you guys. Besides, I admitted, I don't want this thing to last too long. I'm worried about who I'll piss off. Now fully integrated into the ring, I took a breath for dramatic effect, since upgrade didn't need air. I am from Oregon. I was born in Oakland. But not your Oregon, not your Oakland. What? Clint asked. I activated the viewer. The sensation that followed was painful. I pulled in power from the arc reactor and actually felt the massively powerful engine struggle to keep up with the demand. Even for all of Jury Rig's genius, I felt the ring I'd made almost buckle inwards under the weight of the task. I adjusted myself, advanced the machine in a dozen different ways. I fought through a strange sort of pain, and I felt the energy pull at my nanite body. It was a struggle, but after a fight to stay in control, I was showing an image of Captain America speaking to Black Widow. But not the ones I'd come to know and love. The Captain America here had his mask down, revealing someone very different under it. One I'd only recently become familiar with, but that one of us had known his whole life. "Bucky?" Steve asked in shock. "Whoa," Tony said as he watched Natasha give him a very loving kiss that Bucky returned. "Natasha? That?" Natasha stared. "That's me? But different?" It was true, this was comic book Natasha. Slightly taller, with longer hair and a gold belt that held a familiar symbol on the center. She had gold braces on her wrist. Bucky was clean-shaven, unlike the one getting deprogrammed in another room. His hair was cut, and he wore a blue and black spandex version of Steve's uniform. Well, unstable molecules rather than spandex, but still. "This is another reality," I said. "A universe where Bucky and Natasha ended up together, according to the scans I'm getting from it." I switched the view to the next place and felt the arc reactor struggle with it, but there was no danger of the machine disappearing on me. Tony uncrossed his arms when he saw himself as a teenager. "Is that me, Rhodey, and Pepper?" The three of them were standing around in casual clothes with an Iron Man suit in front of them. The teenagers were joking with each other, clearly close. But I didn't meet them until— "Not in this reality," I corrected. "But there you have been friends for much longer." Another one. This time it was Clint. He winced at the sight. "Oh, shit." Hawkeye was sitting in a chair, his head and limbs strapped to it. He was wearing only a white tank top and orange pants. He'd clearly been tortured and was surrounded by men carrying guns. "Is this happening right now?" Steve asked, worried. "Can we help somehow?" "Hell, is this even real?" Tony asked, apparently fascinated. "It is," I answered, "but the way this works is that I'm only getting glimpses. This actually happened further back in this world's history. I wouldn't worry, though." "Why not?" Clint asked, clearly disturbed. At that moment, as some guy with a scar over his right eye leaned in towards Hawkeye to taunt him, Hawkeye flicked his right index finger. Scarkeye suddenly grabbed his neck, choking on something. Hawkeye did the same with his left index finger, and a soldier had the same reaction. His left then right thumb flicked as well, and more men began to die until they were all done. As they fell, a scientist type who'd been watching the proceedings asked a question. "What the hell?" he said in shock. Hawkeye responded as a fingernail was held tightly between his fingers. "Shouldn't have left my fingernails in, dummy. Now be smart and get me out of here, or this goes right between you eyeballs." "Can you do that?" Tony asked his universe's Hawkeye in shock as the group stared at the dimensional viewer. "No," Clint admitted. "Might be worth learning, though." "Yeah, well, I switched away. The rest of that universe sucks." "How do you know?" Natasha asked. "How do you have those worlds' histories?" I felt thankful for my current machine form. It made it easy to lie. "I'm scanning them," I explained. "It's damn exhausting, but I can get summaries on what I'm showing you." "How the hell are you doing that?" Clint asked. "Mostly news stories and the internet," I said helpfully. "But it hurts like hell." "This is hurting you?" Steve asked, worried. I ignored him to focus once more. The next world made everyone blink. It was a white man with black hair going grey at the sides, sitting at a desk and smoking a cigar as he worked on something. As they watched, Maria Hill walked into view. Well, Maria, with an expression on her face as though she'd seen a bad smell. "Who is—" "Oh, come on," Fury said, when the man lifted his face to reveal the eye patch. "In this universe," I explained, "you're the descendant, the Nick Fury Jr., to this guy who has been kept alive since World War II by an experimental drug." "Enough," Fury said. "How do we know this is all real, that it's not just some trick you've pulled off?" "Why would I tell this kind of lie?" I asked. "I'm from another universe, one where superheroes aren't running around. Apparently one of the few where that is true according to my scans. Hell, everything I know about this world is from Google and hacking. I had to learn quick so I didn't end up making mistakes in casual conversation." I switched to other views. A man with a giant pair of angular sunglasses was watching the sunset with a sword on his back and a flame-patterned cloak on his back. A giant robot was standing behind him, with two figures walking towards him. A red-headed man and woman in gender-swapped versions of the same brown-shaded clothes, speaking to a young woman with black hair and red lips, wearing a white blouse and blue skirt. When the three turned to look curiously at the view screen, I switched away hurriedly. Another world, where three people were fighting against robots with skull-shaped heads, dozens of the steel monsters surrounding them. One of them was a man who wore a red cape and a blue outfit with a CES symbol on the front as he fired heat beams from his eyes. There was a woman carrying a sword she used to impale one of the robots, wearing an outfit with a large golden piece of armor over her chest shaped like the letter W, her beauty as clear as her talent in war. The last could barely be seen, more of a black shadow among his more flamboyant comrades, only truly evident by the destroyed robots he left in his wake, simply a mass of darkness that moved like death. "We're just one universe of many," I said, showing a world where a boy with white hair and green eyes in a black outfit with the letter D on it fought against a woman who looked like a green female genie, belly dancer outfit included. One of infinity, because the multiverse theory is true, and it's kinda awesome, knowing how unique we are in all this infinity. "Then where is your world?" Fury asked. "I don't know," I said in frustration. "I didn't fake it. All the power I had now, even with the pain I was fighting through, and I just couldn't—" "You don't know?" Natasha asked, interrupting my thoughts. Feeling testy, I began to explain. "Look!" I switched the view over to where, according to my scans, my world should have been, the world with my nephew, with my parents and my crappy room. Instead, all that appeared was static. I got dropped into this universe and now I can't find mine. Do you want to know something else? I can't find it at any point in its history. Any other universe, even the ones that are destroyed, I can at least view their pasts. But mine? It's just locked out to me. I've got an arc reactor, in parts burning out, a device built by a mad genius like Jury Rig and Upgrade backing me up, but I can't pierce through whatever is blocking me. I shouted the last, enraged. It's not just that I can't get home, it's that I can't even fucking see it. I can't see my family, my friends. I can't find out how my mum is taking my disappearance. But no, I can fucking see the Teletubbies in their goddamn house eating fucking pancakes. The group stared at me before I switched off the viewer. I separated from the viewer, looking at Fury, then turned into a human again. So there it is, Fury. If you want, you can try to arrest me or whatever. But I was given the Omnitrix, and just dropped into this world like a bad habit. All I'm doing is making the best of a bad situation. Everyone looked over at Fury. He eyed me for a moment. "I'm going to have you write a full report, and we're going to still strap you to the lie detector." "Oh, come on," Tony said exasperatedly. Fury ignored him. "You tell me everything you can possibly remember about your life, between your home universe and this one. I don't care if it's a girl who gave you funny feelings in middle school. Tell me everything." When I opened my mouth to protest, he stopped me. "The council and others will have questions about you, questions I'll have to answer. So I'm going to give them answers." Fury eyed the machine. "And destroy that—" "What?" Clint asked in surprise. "I wanted to see me being a badass again. Or see yourself turning evil, Fury said. Or Steve staying in the 40s and having a full life. Tony with kids, an infinity of possibilities, each as slightly possible as the next. Do you all really, and I mean really, want to spend the rest of your life staring into this thing, worried about the lives you might have had? The people you could have loved, who could have lived, or to suddenly become suspicious of a friend because of the chance they might go bad, the way some other version of them did. All the what-ifs. I was suddenly glad I hadn't shown them the ultimate Black Widow who had betrayed her team. Having those worlds just out of your reach. People go insane from regular paranoia. Hell, I'm an expert at it. If even thinking about the possibilities can make people do stupid things, what will being able to actually see them do? We looked over at the viewer. I thought of all of that for a moment. Yeah, that was... I think you're right, Steve said, sounding sad. As tempting as it is, dial. Destroy it. I went over to the dimensional viewer and looked over at Tony. Nothing to say. Tony snorted when everyone looked at him. No, I've got enough issues with my problems in this universe. Besides, I can always make one for myself now that I know it's possible at all. We all thought about that. A moment later, feeling very nervous about working for Tony now, I waved at it. Well, I don't have to destroy it. I'm actually surprised it's still there. It should have. The dimensional viewer began to shake. Hawkeye said slowly, "Should we leave the room?" The machine pulled into itself and imploded with a sound like gravel exploding. "Why is everything you make so weird?" Natasha asked. I smiled just a bit. They have personality. I looked over the group. So, we good? Fury smirked. Not really. Not that I don't like you, but you just admitted you have no idea where you got the watch or who dropped you here, and I believe you on that, so I'll still keep an eye on you, simply because it's safer. Steve, Tony, and I all shared an exasperated look, but like I said, I think your heart's in the right place, and you're too useful to us not to bring in, and that's good enough for me. Well, if that was the best I was getting. So, that makes me an Avenger? Tony grinned at that. There's the fanboy we all know. Is there even a protocol for new Avengers? Clint asked. So far, no, Natasha said. But with Dial, Sam and Rhodey in the picture. We'll discuss it later, Steve said, turning and opening the door for us to exit. For now, I'd like to think on what we've seen. Natasha and Tony seemed to still at that, clearly thinking on that. Natasha's eyes flickered in the direction of where Bucky was being held before apparently dismissing the thought that prompted that. Tony rubbed his chin thoughtfully, and Steve sighed while we all filed out. Time has a talk with everyone out there. We have 10 minutes. Yes, Fury said. We're in for the hard part. He walked outside, his long coat flapping as the Avengers and I followed in his wake. Several S.H.I.E.L.D. agents stepped aside, and soon an armed procession took spots along the wall. You all know your roles in this conversation. Now get changed. I want the Avengers at my side when I meet them, and I need you in costume for that. Later, in the men's locker room, Sam had joined us to put his own clothes on. Tony and Rhodey weren't in with us since their armor would just wear itself onto them in seconds, leaving Steve, Clint, Sam, and me. I was putting on my boots, the last part of my costume to go on when Steve came up and tapped me on the shoulder. "Hey," he said, "I'd like to talk to you in private real quick." Nodding as I tried to guess what this would be about, I finished tying my boots and went to join him in the back. Steve looked around to see if we were alone before speaking. "You said doing that looking between universes hurt. I wanted to ask if you were okay." "I'm good," I said. "Just doing that took a lot out of me. If it wasn't for the ridiculous power of the arc reactor, I wouldn't have been able to do it, and even then I drained the Chitauri armor pieces just to boot the system up. And holding open was like, you ever hold up an impossible weight while having a conversation? A couple of times, Steve said, reminding me just what kind of badass I was talking to. He sighed. And what you said about being from another world, I think in some way I understand how you feel. Yeah, I realized. I guess you'd be one of the few. After all, I wasn't the only one who'd woken up in a world that was so similar and yet so different from home. It takes getting used to, Steve said with a smile. I'm still bad at it. But if you need help, I'm willing to talk. Same, I said warmly. Hell, you ever want to catch up with pop culture? I'm sort of an expert by now. Steve laughed. Well, I have been wondering about anime. When I went on ice, we were still having issues with Japan. He scowled. Not that I approve of how that ended, of course. I winced at the thought of the 2 bombs that had ended that conflict. Yeah, well, that's why we're doing this, right? To stop anything like Pearl Harbor or the bombs from ever taking place again. He nodded thoughtfully at that. Soon we were all dressed in our costumes, Rhodey joining us with Tony. Fury waited until we were all suited up before walking towards the conference room. I felt pretty badass walking through the halls with the group. There's an energy when you walk with superheroes like that, all in costume, something I imagined groups of cosplayers felt something close to. We went in a sort of loose triangle formation, Iron Man and Captain America behind Fury on his right and left sides, respectively. Falcon was behind Captain America, War Machine behind Iron Man. Bringing up the rear was Black Widow and Hawkeye, with Dial, me, in between them. It hadn't been as clear as right then that I was a superhero now. Dial. It had just been a random codename. Even my fights, as desperate as they had been at times, just felt like fights. Why would the scale change my feelings on it? But now, walking among the greats, having S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and personnel watch us as we walked by, their eyes filled with awe, it was pretty cool. But also, "This is so weird," Sam noted to me, as I walked closer to him. "I know," I replied. "I mean, it's also kinda awesome, but—" My fellow newbie and I shared a glance and nodded when we saw we understood the same thing. It was cool, but it was also kind of alienating. Ironically so, considering the Omnitrix. We walked like that until we reached our destination, another conference room. This one was bigger than the last by a wide margin, and it was full of people and cameras, all surrounding a massive table in the center of the room. I took them all in, trying to remember who was who. The World Security Council, all of them sans Gideon Malik, who had gone into hiding when he'd been revealed to be Hydra, and Alexander Pierce, who was now imprisoned. 4 of them, Singh, Rockwell, Hawley, and Yen, gave Natasha and Clint grateful nods, presumably for the 2 saving those members' lives. Phil Coulson, Victoria Hand, Richard Gonzalez, Tomas Calderon, and Jennifer Weaver sat in a line. They all seemed friendly enough. There were also several holographic screens around the table. One had Maria Hill, clearly broadcasting and watching from the Triskelion. Another showed Matthew Ellis, President of the United States, an older man with graying brown hair and piercing blue eyes. The other screens also showed world leaders from other countries: England, Russia, France, China, Japan, Egypt, India, Pakistan. The whole UN was there. Fury circled around to the head of the table, the seat left open for him, and we followed. 2 other seats were open next to it, and Steve and Tony took those. There was a bit of nervousness in the room when Tony's seat let out a few creaks of protest under the weight of his armor, but it held. The rest of us stood behind them, facing the rest of the room. I blinked when I realized that the way we had entered had me standing directly behind Nick, Natasha, and Rhodey on my right, Clint and Sam on my left. I crossed my arms and tried to look professional. Coulson was looking at Steve and Tony apologetically. Steve kind of smiled sadly, while Tony let the impassive look of his helmet speak for itself. The council sitting on the other side of the table eyed us, the whole room still. "Ladies and gentlemen," Fury said simply, "I'm not going to sugarcoat this. We are at war with an enemy that has been hiding within our ranks like a parasite, chewing away at us. They were our friends, our fellow soldiers, even our leaders." Rockwell nodded firmly, scowling at the thought of Malik and Pierce, or so I guessed. Hydra, an old enemy, one we'd thought beaten. They tried to use helicarriers, like the very one we are all standing on, to finally take control of the world. I suddenly realized why Fury had chosen to use one of the helicarriers for this meeting. Luckily, with the help of many of you, S.H.I.E.L.D. has stopped them, and now we have them on the run. Hydra isn't finished though, make no mistake. Despite the Hercules app, despite agents, military and law enforcement all over the world hunting them down, Hydra is fighting back. They're desperate, and desperate people tend to reach for weapons they would never use otherwise. Fury held up a hand when several of his captivated audience began to speak. I won't mince words either. While we may be holding up well, S.H.I.E.L.D. is in shambles. Not just that, but Hydra had its people everywhere. I've had reports of government officials, computer technicians, CEOs, and even a coffee barista with easy access to a Russian diplomat's daughter, all found out and arrested. We can't simply move on from this. S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra are teetering on the brink. I say we get ourselves together before they can. What exactly are you proposing? Councilperson Hawley asked seriously. I agree, a person from one of the screens, the Russian president, said. What is it you want, Fury? Oh, it's not just me, Fury looked over at Steve. Rather than being put on the spot, Steve was ready. We've all come to a decision. Many of us agree that S.H.I.E.L.D., as it was, can no longer stand. We can't simply put it together again. S.H.I.E.L.D., it's done, and something new has to take its place. The room exploded. Coulson stared at Steve and Fury as though they had broken his heart. Hand was shouting at Fury before turning on Rockwell. President Ellis was trying to speak, but he was drowned out by the Chinese president shouting in his language as Jarvis provided subtitles. The various S.H.I.E.L.D. agents around the room shared in the shouting. Fury raised a hand. I pressed down on the Omnitrix. I grew up several feet, grey fur sprouted across me, muscles rose across my form, my fingers became claws, and my mouth became a muzzle. Blitzwolfer. It was hard to control a howl like mine to just be pure noise, rather than destroying the room, but I managed to keep my long cry in control. When I was done, there were a lot of people staring in shock, but no one, not even Fury and those close to me, was deaf. I glared around the room for a moment as Steve began to speak again. This is necessary, he said softly. S.H.I.E.L.D. was compromised in a way no intelligence apparatus ever has before. We have resources, people, and allies, but we need to rebuild, not just to fight Hydra either. What are you going to do? Tony said, drawing attention. The next time someone as smart as me shows up and one of the Avengers can't stop him, or if the next guy who gets a watch like mine, I added, isn't as nice? What will happen? Fury asked, leaning forward to rest his chin on his knuckles, his one eye panning around the room. When someone like Loki shows up again, and Thor isn't around to stop him, but more than that, who will protect those who suddenly find themselves with gifts they can't understand? What do you mean? Tomas asked, confused. The world is becoming full of people like us, Steve said. People with gifts, whether exceptional intelligence, talent in combat, aliens like Thor, or those who have been given gifts due to circumstance beyond their control, like Banner. You want to protect people like that? One of the leaders said in disgust. Or like that damned wolf. I held back a growl. People, Natasha said, drawing the room to her. That's the key word. They're people. We're not saying we don't arrest people who do wrong, but we need to do more than just catalogue people with abilities and tell them to sit tight and do nothing. We need to protect them from those who would do them harm, who would exploit them. People like Bucky Barnes, Tony said, surprising me. He didn't look around when those of us who knew the deeper implications of his words stared at him. He simply let that enigmatic mask keep him hidden. Or Carl Creel, I added. People like me. We know Hydra can brainwash people, that Loki has done it. Not just him, Coulson said. An Asgardian named Lorelei appeared on Earth a while back. We managed to stop her, but if she managed to control someone with powers, isn't that more of a reason to just stop people like that? The Russian president asked. Prevent them becoming a risk? Not when that person is innocent, Clint said. We don't believe people should be punished for the crime of being different. Some of these people just want normal lives. Some come from tough situations or will want to protect others. We need to be more than just the wall between the world we think of as normal and the world we think of as weird. Steve leaned forward. That line doesn't exist anymore. It hasn't existed since I stood in New York City fighting alongside a Norse god and a man in a power suit against aliens coming out of a portal. The world is not normal, but we can still protect it. Keep the innocents safe, no matter where they come from. Now it was my turn. I leaned forward, over fury. Everyone looked at me, the werewolf standing massively as my eyes glared at the audience. And if Hadra, if aliens or even gods come here again trying to exploit, rule or kill us, then we will stop them. Earth will be defended and all of our people as well. This isn't a threat, Fury clarified, not worrying about the wolf who was looming above him, but we are telling you what we believe we need to do. Together we can protect this world. But S.H.I.E.L.D. needs to be rebuilt to do it. With all the damage Hydra has done to us, I looked around. We'd aimed for drama, for shock and awe to convince the room we were right. From the looks of it, it worked. Some people were still not on board. Coulson still looked as though we'd killed his puppy, though Fury had told us he had some ideas about that. Councilperson Rockwell leaned forward. I think we might need to talk about this for a moment longer, but personally, I agree. He ignored the look some in the room gave him. I assume you have a proposal. Fury leaned back in his chair. Axe, show 'em what we got. Of course, sir, the form of EI said. Holographs appeared in front of all the people around the table, and I could see dignitaries on the screens around us being given tablets by their assistants. What you see there are just the bare bones of what I've written up, Fury said simply. Wait, is this real? President Ellis said, looking up from his tablet. You're stepping down as director. Everyone looked at Fury. He smiled, a very sour and sad smile. Of course I am. No matter what happens, I will be the one who is blamed for this. That's not true, Hand said, her eyes soft behind her glasses. None of us realized or suspected anything for years. It doesn't matter, Fury said confidently. I was head of S.H.I.E.L.D. when it was revealed that Hydra infiltrated, and that's okay. I don't mind stepping down for someone new to take the reins, and I will not let my predecessors be blamed for this. I will step down, he smirked. Plus, I like the idea of history knowing me as the last director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Holds weight. Fury wasn't telling the whole story, of course. Just because he wouldn't be in charge didn't mean he was planning to stay out of the fight. But none of those he'd confided in said a word. Me included. It was all part of the plan. Then who will replace you? The British Prime Minister asked. That's what we'll decide, Fury said. I have a list of candidates, but first, before I step down, let's figure out the new rules, shall we? I held back a groan when I realized I'd have to stand for a while they spoke. Still, we were on our way. January 13th. Later, the meeting was still going on, and by later I meant I had left at around 2 a.m. as it continued to take a nap, only to wake up about 4 hours later to find they were still talking. With nothing to do, I took a shower, pulled my hair back, put on my super suit, and went to one of the mess halls. The carrier had 2, one of which was still being used as a makeshift brig for Creel and Bucky, since their special needs meant the actual brig wouldn't cut it. Davida had been put in there with them. Later I'd have to see about possibly fixing it so the brig could hold superhumans, but I decided to just go to get some food in me. When I stepped into the room, everyone stopped what they were doing to stare at me. I blinked at the sudden attention and waved. How's it going? A S.H.I.E.L.D. agent waved back weakly. I went to join the line for food. After a moment, people stopped looking at me, though glances were still thrown at me, especially at the Omnitrix. The line moved very quickly, people simply grabbing the various breakfast foods as fast as they could from the buffet-style setup. Feeling a bit ravenous, I grabbed a bagel, a donut, some eggs, and feeling a bit nostalgic, was happy to see someone had made smoothies, of which I grabbed a strawberry one. I went to an empty table and sat down, eating quickly. Once finished, I grabbed another plate, then sat down to continue. Damn! Someone said as they sat to join me, you can sure put it away, can't you? I looked up to see Sam and gave him a grin around a mouthful of turkey bacon. I haven't eaten in a while, dude. Same, Sam said, wearing his costume just like me. He swiped my donut and chuckled at the glare I gave him for it. Been a wild couple of days, huh? That's putting it lightly, I admitted. Kinda weird not needing to run anywhere for a bit. Sam smirked at that. We ate in silence for a bit, ignoring the looks we got dressed in our costumes, Sam with his jetpack and me with my Omnitrix. In fact, you don't have any clothes here either? I asked Sam. He nodded. Yeah, and the shield stuff they had just doesn't feel right somehow with everything that's going on. That was true. Somehow, with all the discussion on what to do next, wearing shield clothing felt weird. Excuse me? Sam and I looked up to see Fitz and Simmons looking at us. The British duo was standing with trays of their own, both smiling nervously. Simmons, the one who had spoken, waved at the empty table. I'm Gemma Simmons. I work with Agent Coulson.
I'm Leo Fitz, and I work with her, Fitz said nervously.
Well, I mean, we both work for Agent Coulson. Do you mind if we sit with you? Sure, no problem, I said. If Sam doesn't mind. Go for it, Sam said. Grinning eagerly, Fitzsimmons sat down. Fitz next to me, Simmons next to Sam. Sam and I continued to eat. When we realized they weren't eating, we looked at the pair. Fitz was staring at Sam's wing pack, and Simmons was staring at my Omnitrix. When they realized they'd been caught, Simmons laughed nervously. I'm so sorry, she said. It's just your weapons are so fascinating. Yes, I was researching your wing pack, Fitz said excitedly, and I noticed that you could increase the rigidity-flexibility ratio by changing the material to carbon fiber. Yeah, Tony said something about that, Sam said, apparently not knowing what to do about Fitz's enthusiasm. Tony Stark said that. Fitz asked excitedly, turning to Simmons. Did you hear that? Yes. Yes, you said the same thing another genius did, Simmons said dismissively, but with a very fond smile that Fitz returned. But that, she pointed at the Omnitrix. What is it? How does it work? I looked at the Omnitrix, then at Fitz and Sam. Sam shrugged. Hey, I'm curious too, man. Fitz nodded in agreement. Well, all right, I swiped my donut back from Sam and took a bite. Swallowing that, I was about to speak when Simmons interrupted me, when she saw more people walk into the room. Wait, she said excitedly. Sky, Trip, over here. Sam and Fitz looked over as well. The pair walked over to join us. Trip had a wide smile on his face as he sat, Sky looking less excited. Look at you two, sitting with real Avengers now. More reserve Avengers, I admitted, Sam nodding. Still pretty cool, Sky said. What is your name? Simmons asked me. I mean, I know they call you Dial, but... At her leading pause, I answered, it's Mahmoud. Yes, Simmons said. He was going to tell us about the watch. Omnitrix, Sam corrected for me. He's really specific about that. Wait, Sky asked. You're the guy who made that giant diamond at the Triskelion. When I nodded, she looked at Sam. What was it like flying through that thing? Whoa, wait, Simmons said hurriedly. I want to hear about the watch first. I looked at Sam. He smirked at the lost look on my face. You first, man. Sighing, I put down my food and held out the watch. Okay, first off, I don't know who gave this to me or why. I mean, I knew who, but explaining Professor Paradox's dickery was too much trouble. Oh, Simmons seemed disappointed. But the watch imprinted its history into me, I said, Fitzsimmons seeming to perk up at that. So I know who created it. Azimuth, an alien scientist. Was he a famous weapon designer? Fitz asked. Not intentionally, I leaned back and sighed sadly. So, look, Azimuth was, well, he was brilliant, smarter than any person in 3 galaxies and more creative to boot. While his whole species, the Galvan people, were naturally more intelligent than almost any other species, he had this spark that none of the rest could match. But he had something even better than that. He was in love. Simmons, who had been listening avidly, suddenly smiled softly at that. Fitz looked over at her and smiled as well. The girl he loved was a scientist as well, a woman named Zenith, and someone he cared for deeply. One day he went out on a date with her and they saw the planets align in the skies above. When they aligned, Azimuth was inspired. What if, he thought to himself, I created a weapon that could tap into the fundamental forces of the universe, a weapon powered by existence itself. The thought consumed him, and he spent all of his time creating it. And that's when he created the Omnitrix, Fitz asked. No, I answered. He created Ascalon, a sword. What? Trip asked, confused. All that build up for a sword? Elegant, isn't it? I asked. All the power of the universe in something so small. Zenith tried to warn him as he created it, but he ignored her, obsessed with creating his masterpiece. So she left, and he never noticed. Simmons seemed crestfallen, while Fitz was thoughtful. Asmuth finished Ascalon, and a warrior stole the weapon, hoping to use it to stop an eons-long civil war between the many factions on his homeworld. And when Asmuth saw the destruction of that world, saw how his creation turned a planet into an asteroid field with a single swing, he was devastated. Only then did he realize what he had done, that he had sacrificed Zenith for nothing. I was really getting into the story now. So Asmuth hid Ascalon away and dedicated himself to peaceful sciences. He wanted to apologize, and he started on a creation that would show how sorry he was, hoping that she would see how he had changed, and one day she would return to him. The Omnitrix, Guy said, likely figuring out where this was going. It's not a weapon, not really. I extended my hand out. It's a tool meant for peace. Imagine being able to walk a mile in other species' shoes to understand them, because, in a way, you are them, an ambassador who understood all people, who could stand in their defense without judgment, but that was only part of it. Zenith, Simmons took hold of my wrist, staring at the Omnitrix. Asmuth wanted to prove he had learned his lesson, to prove he cared. Romantic, right? I said sarcastically. Instead, Asmuth failed. He made a tool for peace, and someone saw its potential for a weapon. Yeah, Fitz said sadly. That fits. Anytime someone just wants to advance science, someone else sees a shiny new bomb. That's part of why I like the idea of S.H.I.E.L.D. restructuring itself, I admitted, gently pulling my wrist. There are peaceful aliens out there, ones like the Asgardians, making alliances with them, furthering Asmuth's dream. I've done good work patrolling in New York City, and I want to do that later. But making the world and possibly beyond a better place is nice too. Oh, now that's a question, Fitz said. Can you turn into Asgardians? Like Thor? Now that would be awesome, Sky said. I mean, Thor is just... Sky sighed. So dreamy. Sky, Simmons said, sounding scandalized, a blush on her face. No, she's right, I admitted. I mean, we've all seen the pictures, and I'm comfortable enough in my sexuality to admit Thor is hot. We all thought about that for a moment. Well, Tripp said, shaking his head. Now that you mention it, you two were in on this whole idea to rebuild S.H.I.E.L.D., right? I mean, you were in on it from the start? Well, yeah, I said. One of my aliens even created the Hercules app. Fitz and Sky seemed to become very focused on me, all of a sudden. Fitz spoke first. Is there any chance that the app can make a mistake? Fitz, Sky said, sounding sad and frustrated. No, I mean, if it made some miscalculation or discovered someone was not actually Hydra, maybe. I was already pulling out my phone. I placed it on the table, activating the Hercules app. Who was it you're asking about? Grant Ward, Fitz said hesitantly. I opened his file. Okay, Grant Ward. Recruited by John Garrett after he was arrested for trying to kill his parents and oldest brother in a fire. Hydra is very detailed in its filing, so I sighed. I'd already known what I'd find. I passed my phone over to Fitz, who looked at it desperately. He flipped through the files, one by one, ignoring the pitying look Simmons was giving him. Fitz, Sky said. It's not true, Fitz said, his voice wavering. There must be something, right? Something, some proof. He didn't just die a traitor. There has to be some mistake, some reason. Fitz, Sky yelled. Ward was a traitor. Okay? He got what he deserved. The cafeteria froze. Sky was breathing heavily. Fitz stared at her. After a moment, he tossed my phone back to me and stood up, walking away very quickly. Simmons went to follow, but Tripp put a hand on her shoulder. Give him time, girl, he said softly. Sky groaned, putting her face in her hands. I shouldn't have done that. Don't worry about it, Tripp said. We're all dealing with betrayal today. Looking around, I could see he was right. None of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents surrounding us seemed confused, just understanding. So, I said, maybe we should meet up later, I asked. I know Tony wanted to talk to me about something. Invite Fitz along, we can all hang out. Not me, Tripp said easily. I'm meeting a friend. I'll try to get Fitz to come, Simmons said. I know he'll be excited. And I'll go too, Sky said. Maybe I can apologize then. I don't suggest it, Sam said. Stuff like that. It takes time, not apologies. Maybe talk him through it, but the fact is you were right. Well, maybe apologize for yelling, Trip corrected, but yeah, give him time. You should still come through, I added. We're supposed to be doing something important, apparently, although he said we were meeting on the bus. I ended up kind of regretting inviting them when I realized what the something important was. You absolute son of a bitch, Tony Isley. Stark, Coulson said serenely, trying to calm him down. No, don't start with that. You couldn't send a text, an email, a signal flare, Tony said, getting in Coulson's face. I mourned you, Coulson. I actually felt bad. And I appreciate that, Coulson said back. But we weren't exactly friends, Tony. We were allies occasionally when you weren't locking me out of the tower to avoid my visits, or pranking me like we were in high school. That's how I treat my friends, Tony said, looking offended. Rhodey never complained. He complained all the time, Coulson shouted back. What, you spied on him too? Tony scoffed. New flash, Tony. I am a spy. As the two quibbled back and forth at each other inside the boss's laboratory, I looked around. The bus was a pretty cool-looking plane. The hangar door was down to let sunlight in, letting me see it in all its glory. A sweet red convertible was parked on the right side of the door, all sleek lines and leather seats, a beauty from an older time. The left side of the door held a big black SUV. Some stairs lead up to another floor, while a set of glass panels separated the cargo hold from the forensics and research lab we stood in. Sky, Fitzsimmons, Melinda May, Clint, and Natasha all watched the fireworks alongside me. I leaned in towards Natasha. How long is this going to go on? I whispered. I'm just wondering why we're here, she whispered back. He said this was important. Well, you know, Tony, Clint said. He likes an audience. Dharma Queen? Melinda asked. Clint and Natasha nodded. This is why you should never meet your heroes, Fitz said sadly, getting a pat on the back from a sympathetic Simmons. Been working for me so far, I said. Clint and Natasha grinned at me, to which I could only helplessly shrug. Once, fanboy, Tony said, somehow perfectly cutting my thought off and completing it at the same time. Come to meet Agent. Apparently, Tony's nickname for Coulson was Agent. With a bit of confusion at how casual Tony was suddenly acting, I stepped forward, the others coming along. Agent. This is... Dial, Coulson said, extending a hand to shake. Tony interrupted our handshake when I went to shake Coulson's. Don't interrupt me. This is Fanboy. He makes cool things and turns into giant things, but his wardrobe needs work. Natasha, my costume designer, raised an offended eyebrow. Okay, who've you got? Tony asked. Coulson, clearly used to Tony, waved at his own team. Melinda May, the pilot of the bus and one of the finest martial artists I've ever met. Charmed, Tony said. I'm not, Melinda returned coolly. Tony smirked at that. Coulson continued. This is Sky, a skilled hacker and someone who is training to be a SHIELD agent. Kinda useless now, Sky admitted, looking at Tony with a bit of awe. I just got the badge too. Keep it, Natasha said. Souvenir. Plus, history buffs love stuff like that. You still selling old Russian military gear? Clint asked. Natasha smirked, and Melinda surprised me, as well as her crew, by chuckling a little. Melinda smirked at them. You had to be there, was all she said. Okay, hearing that story later, Tony said, ignoring the looks the super spies gave him. How about the married couple? What? Fitz said, startled. Oh, we're not. We're not a couple, Simmons said quickly. Yes, just friends. Close for years, but not a couple. Tony looked between them, then at Coulson. And Ross and Rachel do what on your crew? I blinked. Wait, Tony knew who they were. Why was he pretending otherwise? Coulson sighed before gesturing. This is Leopold Fitz. Fitz is my engineer, a weapons and tech expert. And this is Gemma Simmons, my biochemist specializing in life sciences. Hello, Fitz said, waving a bit weakly. Tony eyed them both for a moment. Jarvis, bring it up. A hologram appeared in the back, hovering over a table. Fitzsimmons pointed at it. How did you— I'm Tony Stark, Tony said in answer, walking over to the table. I don't like you messing with my plane, Coulson said in annoyance. And I don't like wasting money on flowers, but I did it for your funeral, Tony shot back. How do you keep from hitting him? Melinda asked, Natasha and Clint. Practice mostly, Natasha said with a smirk. I don't resist the urge at all, honestly. Keeps him honest, Clint stated proudly, leaning out of the way when Tony threw a pen at him. So you guys made this? Tony asked, pointing at the hologram, which was a floating blue image of a gun shaped like a sniper rifle. Huh, I see you restored the data, Fitz told Skye. Coulson told me to do it, Skye complained. Fitz sighed. Yes, I made that. It's brilliant, Tony said. Fitz blinked, surprised. You think the night-night guns are brilliant? Hell yes, I do, Ross, Tony said. Cool name for it, by the way. Oh, Fitz responded. Well, they're calling it ISA now. No, Tony said dismissively. Night-night gun, he turned to look at the hologram. A gun that fires a dendrotoxin bullet, knocking people out like that quickly and with no side effects. You both made it, right? Yes, Simmons said quickly. Yes, we did. You see, the way we designed it was— And suddenly, she was no longer speaking with words I could understand. Fitz immediately joined in and Tony responded. Fitz, Simmons moved around the table and showed him a section of the hologram. The two so in sync, it was amazing. Just as amazing was how Tony seemed to vibe with them, falling in step with their thinking and responding to it.
Well, Coulson said.
I suppose they're going to be at it for a while. He looked over at us. I suppose I can show you the plane now. Not yet, Tony said suddenly. He walked up to look Coulson in the eyes. I still have more to say to you. Coulson and Tony looked at each other a moment longer. After a bit, Coulson nodded and walked towards a back room, Tony following. Simmons said nervously, should we go with them? The door slammed behind Tony. Apparently not, Fitz said. Melinda looked at Clint and Natasha. They both shook their heads, and Melinda nodded. Apparently spies had their own body language. Well, I suppose we have some time, Simmons said. Yes, Fitz looked over at me. Can we scan your Omnitrix? Maybe open it up and study it. Please, Simmons asked cutely. I promise, we won't break it. How invasive are the scans going to be? And do I need to take it off? I hesitated. Also, what are the chances you'll activate something that will blow us all up? Simmons and Fitz chuckled dismissively. Oh no, we're very good at studying alien technology. I think we'll be fine. I thought about that. After all, the Omnitrix had a universal self-destruct in it. One I was very scared to activate since I was one of the assholes who lived in the universe. How about instead I tell you how it works? They did not seem satisfied at all with that. Before they could say anything, I spoke again. Also just scans. No touching buttons or taking it apart. No putting lasers on it. I rather feel you're being insulting, Fitz said with a scowl. Remember how smart I said Azimuth was? This thing makes most other alien tech, maybe all of it, obsolete. I know it's insulting, but it is the truth. You're very smart cavemen studying a supercomputer, I admitted, one owned by a very dumb caveman. We're all dealing with a piece of tech so advanced I can only turn into 10 out of the over 1 million aliens on it. Let's not tempt fate. Everyone looked at the watch. Fitz finally sighed. Okay, well, scans only, and you'll tell us about it? Nodding, I began to speak. Tony Stark, genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. Tony stood with Coulson in the tight space of the room and glared at Coulson. In all his life, he'd rarely been this angry. The closest was when Obadiah Stane revealed that he had been selling weapons to terrorists, which rested firmly under finding out his parents had been murdered. Tony, why, you were my friend, Tony said suddenly. I mean, I know I'm not friendly, but Pepper cried when she found out you died. Her and your girlfriend, they still talk about you. Tony shook his head. Does she know you're alive? Coulson stilled. No, she doesn't. You absolute prick. Tony, I actually did die. I wasn't faking. My heart stopped. My brain function was gone. Hell, we're still trying to understand how I was brought back. Yeah, I know. Dial brought up the files for me, the billionaire said, Coulson stopping in surprise. I don't care. You came back to life. You had months to talk to one of us, you asshole. They stared at each other. Finally, Coulson sighed and leaned against the wall behind him. You're right. I should have let people know. Not the whole world, but people, he admitted. I'm sorry, Tony. Tony shook his head. Not good enough. What? Coulson said, finally annoyed. I want those three outside to work with me. Coulson blinked in surprise. You want what? Sky, Ross, and Rachel. I don't care if they work for whatever this new club Fury and Steve are building is at the same time, but I've read the team files, the stuff they've done hacking into S.H.I.E.L.D. with a laptop, creating a counter-serum to the centipede formula, curing a Chitauri virus. They can do a lot more under me than they can with S.H.I.E.L.D. I want to work with them. That's what I want in return. Tony, you realize that Sky and Fitzsimmons make their own choices, Coulson said. Then let me ask them, Tony said. Take them to my labs, show them what I can do for them. Wait, was all this anger because you wanted to borrow my experts? Coulson asked. Tony shrugged. Not at first. I'm still pissed at you. But I'm planning something big. I've got Dial on board, and Bruce. But I've seen what your team can do, and I think they can do even more. Should I be worried? Coulson asked. Not really, Tony crossed his arms, but you owe me more than an I'm sorry. They aren't commodities for me to trade, Stark. I'm not saying they are, Coulson. I'm just saying I think they can do some real good with me. But I know they're your team, so I'm asking permission. Tony smirked. But like I said, you do at least owe me. Like I said, they don't need my permission, Coulson said. Hell, I'm not even sure I'll have a job once Fury's done. But let them know that whatever their choice, they still have a place on whatever team I end up on. Whether they work for you at the same time or not, Tony nodded. Now, let's talk about the other stuff you owe me. Coulson rolled his eyes. Mahmoud Shahed's dial. Fitz ran a device over my wrist as Simmons and Sky watched. May Clint and Natasha had all gone upstairs to talk about spy stuff. I guessed. So yeah, I said. The codon stream is what allows the Omnitrix to do its thing. All the genetic information the Omnitrix can access exists in that stream. Well, Fitz said, it is giving off some very odd readings. If this is accessing another dimension for power, that would explain it. Can you turn into an alien? Simmons asked. That may give us new readings. I blinked. Yeah, okay. I thought about it, then tapped the watch. In seconds, I'd become Diamond Head with my proud battle cry. Funny, for some reason, I was really starting to prefer Diamond Head over Blitzwolfer. Weird, but I went with it. Whoa, Sky said softly, staring up at me. You're big and shiny. Yeah, I get that a lot, I said. Oh my, Simmons said, walking up to look at me as Fitz stared. And this means your DNA has changed as well? Yeah, I said. I wonder. Fitz moved around. I can sense some sort of energy from you. I raised a hand palm upwards and made a crystal sprout from it. Fitz stared at his scanner, then looked at the crystal I'd sprouted. And that energy made the crystal grow, at a guess. Does that contain your DNA? Simmons asked. It's quite beautiful. I released the crystal and rested it on the table. Sky backed away from it nervously. There's no chance you have any diseases or anything, is there? Sky asked. I mean, the last time we interacted with an alien thing carrying a virus, Simmons stared at the crystal I'd created with sudden fear when she realized what Sky was implying, Fitz stepping further back from me. I wouldn't worry, I said simply. I've been turning into aliens for weeks without anyone getting sick. Besides, I'm more worried about my human form getting sick. I got the sniffles 1 week, and Swampfire couldn't control his powers. Really, Simmons said, stepping closer to the crystal. So your human form's health has some effect on the aliens then. Can you turn into another one? Fitz asked politely. For some reason I can't understand some of these readings. I might be able to help with that actually, I said, tapping the Omnitrix. Upgrade. I leaned forward and poured into Fitz' scanner. Whoa, what the? Fitz freaked out and dropped me. Stepping back, I released a loud beeping noise as my tiny body hit the floor. I grew legs from the bottom of my oblong body and rose up, looking around while blinking with an eye made from the scanner's port. Feeling a bit dramatic, I grew arms and waved at the three. He's so cute, Simmons cried happily. Yeah, still a 27-year-old man, I reminded her with my green circuits glowing with every word. Whoa, Sky lowered to look at me. What does that feel like? I mean, mixing with technology. Like reinstalling your third lung, I said, getting confused blinks. Hold on 1 second. I think I can make the scanner better. You mean you can improve technology permanently? Fitz asked. Yeah, but I don't seem to be that good at it, I admitted. Some of my aliens mesh better with my personality than others do. But here, I rose up and separated from the scanner, becoming a giant nanite goo monster once more and passing the scanner to Fitz, who looked at it. Try it now. Fitz turned it on and seemed staggered by what he was seeing. Gemma, look at these readings. I know, Simmons said excitedly, staring at the computer that was receiving the scanners. Just then Tony and Coulson walked back into the room. I turned into my human form as they joined us. Fitz Simmons, Tony would like to speak with you, Coulson said, looking around. Where's May? May went upstairs with Black Widow and Hawkeye, Sky said with a grin. Seriously, how cool is that sentence? Fangirl, Tony coughed. When Sky glared at him, he smirked. Sorry, my cough interrupted me. I called you fangirl. Let's go join them, Coulson said, guiding Sky and me away. Smiling, we all went upstairs as Tony and Fitzsimmons continued to talk science at a rapid pace.
What's it like?
Sky asked me later. We were sitting on the top level of the plane, resting on plush seats around a table. Coulson, May, Clint and Natasha were sitting a bit away from us, joking around and reminiscing, which left Sky and me to talk. But man, the bus really was a nice plane. For something owned by S.H.I.E.L.D., I was kind of jealous of all the soft chairs, the bar, and all the other amenities.
What's more like, I asked, sipping at my orange juice.
Oh, come on, Sky said, sounding excited. Turning into aliens. What does it feel like? I grinned at her. Oh, man, it's a total blast. I mean, it's weird. Some of my aliens are just plain crazy, but some of them... I thought of Diamond Head's incredible strength and power, flying as Astrodactyl, zooming through the city in a blur as Fast Track. There is nothing like it in the world. Knowing at any second I could just tap my wrist and get a few minutes to do things no one else can. Man, Sky leaned back, staring at the Omnitrix with a smile. That sounds really fun. You have no idea, I admitted. Okay, now you're rubbing it in. Just a bit, I said with a grin that she returned. You ever think of letting other people try that out? She asked. I shrugged. All the time. Sometimes as a possible strategy, sometimes just to let someone try. You can't take that off. I can, I said, but no one else can. Once it's on, I'm the only one who can wear it. Can I try? Sky asked. I scoffed. No way. This is my super awesome alien watch. Stingy, Sky teased. I nodded slightly, watching as she slowly drank the brown alcohol in her cup. She didn't strike me as someone who drank often, but apparently she'd needed it. I looked over at the group of super spies. Coulson and May were drinking the same alcohol that Sky would. May seemed tense, the older Asian woman engaging in the conversation only in the sense that she was sitting close to it. Coulson was talking, but it didn't feel real, somehow, like he was going through the motions. Sky was the same way, like she was trying to distract herself and failing desperately. Well, shoot. I had a distraction that few in the world could match. I got up and held a hand out to Sky. Hey, you want to see something cool? She blinked up at me. Ah, what? Something cool? It really put things in perspective for me, and I think you'll enjoy it. Granted, every human on Earth would enjoy it. But, are we even allowed to leave? She asked, still taking my hand and rising up as I pulled her along. I ignored the confused looks I got from the super spies. If anyone tries to stop me, I'll try to unlock Way Big and throw them into the horizon, I said, moving towards the hangar. You do not have an alien called that, she said, giggling. That's so dumb. Yeah, well, if you saw him, you'd understand. I took a moment to feel offended on Ben's behalf. I liked the aliens' names. We went down the stairs and I poked my head in on Tony, Fitz and Simmons, still discussing things at a rapid pace, now looking at the scanner I had modified. Hey guys, Rees. The three looked over at me. Sky and I are stealing a Quinjet. Sky gave me a startled look. Wanna come?
What?
Fitz said, shocked. Hell yes, Tony said, delighted. Absolutely not, Simmons said at the same time, horrified at the idea in a way that made me smile a little wider. Hermione Granger would have loved Simmons. Yeah, Sky said, letting go of my hand. I'm not so sure about. Hey, Fury, I said into the Omnitrix's comlink. X, connect him to the speakers. Of course, sir, X said. Dial, Fury said, annoyed. This better be quick. I'm stealing a Quinjet with Tony and some of Coulson's people, I said simply. Fury sighed in annoyance but didn't really seem to care. Well, we were thinking about redistributing some of our resources. Sure, it's yours. What? Dial, I may be suspicious of you, but I'm also grateful, Fury said simply. You were essential in saving S.H.I.E.L.D. resources, and especially personnel. Many of my people are alive because of you and the Avengers now. You've more than earned a Quinjet, so go ahead, pick one, and have X let me know which you took. Fly safe. With that, Fury hung up, leaving us all in shock. I mean, I had a Quinjet now. Holy shit! Wait, had Fury done that just to mess with me? Or was he honestly grateful despite all his suspicions? Whatever, I had a Quinjet. Looks like you have a Quinjet now, Tony said, somehow reading my mind and rushing out of the lab. So where are we going? What is going on? Someone said upstairs. I looked up to see Clint leaning on the railing above, looking down at us. Fury told me to come babysit you, and that he gave you a Quinjet. Was he kidding? I knew that he couldn't just let us have this, Tony groaned in annoyance, but I just grinned, feeling a bit giddy and confused all in one. Yeah! Can you believe it? I mean, what the hell, right? Come with us. What exactly has you so excited? Clint asked curiously, bypassing the stairs to simply hop over the railing. Yeah, seriously, Sky asked, sounding a bit weirded out. Okay, I said, raising my hands up. Yesterday, I saw something amazing, something so beautiful it took my breath away. Damn, you just met her, Tony said, looking between Sky and I. Granted, I don't blame you, but... Sky grinned at Tony. That's an ego boost for me. Will you all just come on, I said, looking over at Fitzsimmons, who still looked hesitant. Look, I promise, it is going to be awesome. Moments later, I was merged with a Quinjet again. Upgrade's incredible powers being put to use. My Quinjet, seriously, I loved Fury. For all his suspicion, gifting me with a Quinjet in return for saving S.H.I.E.L.D. made him my hero. As of then, I had flown into space once more. This time I turned the bottom of the aircraft transparent to show the world below. Man, Clint said slowly, sitting on the transparent floor and staring down at Earth. She really is beautiful. Fitzsimmons, Sky and Tony were staring at the same view, while I was using my cameras and sensors to do the same. We were floating over the East Coast now. The East Coast of the United States, that is. I can't believe we're actually watching this, Sky said softly. It's so pretty, Simmons said brightly. Look at the way the clouds are forming to the north. Do you think? Possibly, Fitz replied, but of course. Yes, that might happen, Simmons agreed. To my surprise, Tony suddenly cut in. I don't think so. Look, the winds are clearly breaking up the clouds as they go south. Fitzsimmons both stared for a moment before nodding simultaneously. Oh yes, that's quite right, Simmons said. God, there are 3 of them, Sky said, sounding more happy than annoyed. Still, it's very pretty. Fitz shook his head. This is unbelievable. I mean, we're in space. I know, Simmons giggled. Earth's small, Tony said, sounding very different from his usual self. I mean, obviously it's not small, but... No, I interrupted. She's small, beautiful, and so I didn't say anything else. Until you're up there, watching home spin below you among the beauty of the stars, Earth never seems real as a concept. You can know, intellectually, that you live on a tiny piece of the universe in a far bigger part of it, but it's only when you see her in all her glory that the concept of it really hits you. We floated there for a while before Clint sighed, looking over towards the sun. This is pretty crazy, man. How fast are you like this? Not light speed fast, I admitted, but give me time, I think. I think I can make things better. Not just upgrade them temporarily, but permanently. How fascinating, Simmons said, looking around at the black and green interior of the ship. And you said you're a species made of nanites. That's how you improved the scanner back in the lab. Yeah, I said through the Quinjet's internal speakers. Well, the speakers I had made. And how much can you change? Fitz asked. What's it like? Not a lot of ways I can explain it, but upgrade is really damn versatile. Oh, here. I raised a podium in front of Sky, who blinked when it opened on top to reveal a keyboard and screen. Check it out. I can make computers. Can your nanites be replicated? Simmons asked. I've got theories about that, Tony said. You guys are really ruining the experience, Clint noted, looking over as Sky began typing at the computer. I had made her with great enthusiasm. I could feel her sending a message to Coulson, who didn't respond. Well, the experience is going to be over in a bit, I admitted, a familiar red beep coming from the Omnitrix symbol. Clint and Tony froze. Sky and Fitzsimmons looked over at them, understanding something was wrong. Tony said, these things are airtight, right? Clint didn't seem to know. With a final beep, I appeared in the back of the Quinjet in human form. The transparent floor became black metal again. More importantly, the artificial gravity I had been creating disappeared, leaving us all to begin to float. It was airtight, but I just made it more so, I admitted, spinning in the air to look at everyone. Time as goop left me well adjusted to floating. The Quinjet isn't quite a spaceship, but it will get us to home and the engines should be a lot faster now. Oh, thank God, Fitz said with a sigh, floating to grab at his seat so he could strap himself down. Clint rose up, pulling his floating form over to the cockpit. Seriously, what is with that thing's random timing? I think we were up here for about 12 minutes this time. It may be some sort of failsafe, Fitz yelled towards the front as Clint sat down. Hawkeye, sir. Call me Clint. Fitz grinned at that. Today has been weird, Sky said, looking at me when I sat down. Seriously, I'm hanging out with 3 Avengers in space. Excuse me, Tony said, smirking. 2 Avengers, fanboy here as a reserve member at best. I can kick the arse of every other Avenger in the right form, though, I mumbled. Tony grinned, not disagreeing. Fanboy, Sky asked as Clint turned the ship towards the Earth. Oh, you didn't know? Tony asked, looking mischievous. I'm his favorite Avenger. You mispronounced Black Widow, I sniped. I distinctly remember saying, Black Widow is my favorite Avenger. All that leather really does it for you, huh? Sky asked me. She smirked at the betrayed look I gave her. So back to the rendezvous? Clint asked, flying down. Hey, Jarvis, Tony asked. Are they still talking about, what was it? International border laws, sir, Jarvis said. God, please keep me from politics, Tony said. An ironic statement from the man whose involvement with such in the comics caused a civil war. Yeah, let's not. Hey, let's go to my place. I want to show you guys the labs. Wait, at Stark Tower? Fitz asked. It's the Avengers Tower now, Clint responded from the pilot's seat. Shush, Legolas, I'm talking. Tony tossed something at Clint, who easily dodged it. What do you say, Ross and Rachel? Want to see my toys? The pair seemed to glow with happiness. Oh, yes, we would very much like, if it's not too much trouble. How about you, fangirl? Tony asked Sky. Sure, she said brightly, not bothered by the name. Keep the good times rolling. I hid a smile. Maybe they'd have to face it later. But for now, I'd managed to distract the 3, and that was good enough.
Cool, I'll introduce you to Bruce.
Bruce Banner, Fitzsimmons yelled in unison. Such an honor, sir, Simmons said excitedly, shaking the hand of the man in front of her. Oh, yes, Fitz said, pushing in for a handshake as well. You are just so brilliant. Your thesis on radiation physics and on the biological ramifications, on the ways that it could improve medicine, Simmons continued. Changed our lives, Fitz finished, waving his hands in emphasis. Your papers are still taught at the Shield Academy. Fitz seemed to realize something. Well, we're taught, I suppose. The man looked between them, looking befuddled but pleased. Well, thank you. Always good to be known more for my work rather than, Bruce couldn't help but look saddened for a moment. Seriously? Tony asked, annoyed. Why weren't they like this for me? Because you're a billionaire scientist and Bruce is a regular scientist, Clint supplied. You're not as classy. I'm classy, Tony said, feigning like he was hurt by that. If it helps, I still like you, Skye said, grinning. Tony looked between them, annoyed. Seriously, I don't get as much respect as I deserve. I ignored them to take a good look at Bruce Banner, the Incredible Hulk. Seriously, the damn Hulk. So freaking cool. Granted, he wasn't the rage monster right now, but he also wasn't some stereotypical string bean people assume most scientists were. He actually was very well built, likely a byproduct from being on the run from the US military for so long, with curly black hair and some beard scruff that was going a bit grey. He wore a simple sweater and blue jeans and seemed nervous, but happy to speak with Fitzsimmons. I looked around. Damn, you really went all out making this place, I said to Tony. He smirked, looking around. Like it? I wanted it to have all the bells and whistles. I could get used to it, Skye said. The room of the tower we were standing in was massive, the sort of place with so many zeros on its price tag it would make me pass out at the mere thought of spending so much. It had a fancy bar on one side of the room, black tiles on the floor everywhere, plush leather couches, and a second floor visible from the first. The place looked like a nightclub. I walked over to a nearby window and looked out on New York City. Tony and Skye followed me, Clint opting to go upstairs so he could have a view of everything. Great view, right? Tony asked casually. Yeah, Skye stared out at the buildings and streets of the city. I think I can see my favorite coffee shop right over there. That's my old warehouse, I think, I pointed out into the city. I was squatting over there. I miss that warehouse. Tony snorted. Yeah, well, you moved up in the world, pun totally intended, so don't go shedding tears about it. Skye, Simmons called out, getting her friend's attention. Come to look at this. She gave us an apologetic look before going to join her friends. As she did, Tony looked over at me. What do you think? It's nice. Thanks for the invite, by the way. Wasn't as spontaneous as it seemed, Tony admitted. Coulson wanted his team to have a good time. You deciding to steal a Quinjet just made it easy. I looked over at Tony, surprised. He shrugged. I was always planning on taking you, Ross, and Rachel with me, and I know Fury was trying to find some way to show you some appreciation. Fury isn't exactly rainbows and sunshine, but he knows to be nice, even when he's a paranoid asshole. And Coulson, I asked, was he in on it? He gave me permission to talk to them, Tony admitted. But I'm the one who has to convince them working with Bruce, you and I is a good idea. Tony, I said, suddenly suspicious. What is it that you're planning? Even if S.H.I.E.L.D. is rebuilding, even with the Avengers, we might not be enough, Tony said. I want to make something to help us protect people, something that can stop threats before they start. To prevent anything from space coming near us without getting vetted. I thought about BEN10, about the plumbers, and the time a species of frog people had attacked. They'd had to work around something to do it, if I remembered correctly. Hell, wasn't the plot of the third Men in Black movie based around something like that? And then there were the Mac guns from Halo, big cannons that could shoot a ship to pieces that were left in orbit. Plus, it was time I make something to prevent people like Davida from mind-controlling me again. I have some ideas about that, I told Tony. Yeah, well, hopefully your little red guy can make them, Tony said. By the way, I want to test you with something. First, Tony put a hand on my shoulder and guided me to the others. When we joined them, Bruce was listening as Simmons enthusiastically spoke about something. As we came closer, my Omnitrix beeped, surprising me, but when I looked down at it, the watch was normal. Wondering why it had done that, I focused on Bruce, who seemed amazed. A disease that can spread through electromagnetic shock, Bruce asked her. When Simmons nodded, he grinned. That is fascinating. I mean dangerous, but if you could use that system to transfer cures, We managed to suspend the cure in a mineral-based solution that could give it to her with an electrical shock, Fitz said. But we couldn't figure out if other cures could be spread that way as well. Weren't you guys talking about it being a way to transfer cures over the internet? Sky idly asked. That would be incredible, Bruce said in amazement. Cures that could be stored as data. The number of people that could be saved with that. Being able to send cures to people with the press of a button. Yes, but we've had trouble with it, Simmons admitted. Without more samples of similar diseases, we haven't been able to see if other cures could be created, and our attempts to make such vaccines with samples of Earth diseases have come to a standstill. I'd like to see your research if you don't mind, Bruce asked. Fitz and Simmons looked like they had never heard of something more wonderful. Now that works out, Tony said, getting everyone's attention. I want Jury Rig to take a look at something. Jury Rig? Bruce asked. Oh, right, I guess you haven't heard, Tony said with a smile. Turns out you aren't the only guy who can turn into giant monsters. Tony? Someone said. We all turned to see a woman walking into the room. She was wearing a black dress that fit her tall and thin frame very well, had red hair in a high ponytail, and freckles across her nose. She walked over to us smiling. Happy walked in behind her and gave me a light glare that I returned with a sigh. Jarvis told me you brought company, the woman said. Tattletale, Tony said to the air. She asked why a Quinjet was parked on the roof. Jarvis informed Tony, and I'm sure she broke you after hours of torture, Tony said. Okay, well, these are Fangirl, Ross, Rachel, and the hacker, Happy said. Wait, you know me? Sky asked, surprised. You hacked us too, the woman Pepper Potts at a guess said, while Happy frowned. Sky looked around. No? Seriously, how many holes are there in my security? I mean, I get fanboy, but fangirl too? Tony asked, annoyed. Anyways, this is Happy Hogan, my forehead of security, and Pepper Potts, the real CEO and my girlfriend. On days when he isn't running around the world without telling me, Pepper said, shaking my hand, then moving on to the others. Tony waited until she had been fully introduced before looking between Bruce and Pepper. Guys, I need to talk to you about something. Happy, can you show them to the labs? My personal one. Happy, Pepper, and Bruce seemed shocked. Happy looked at Sky and I. Tony, are you sure? Yes, Tony was uncharacteristically serious. Now, I need to talk to Pepper and Bruce. I gave the others an awkward look that was returned. Happy led us away as Pepper gave Tony a worried look. Steve Rogers, Captain America. Steve watched calmly as Fury worked the room. In all of his interactions, Steve had never thought of Fury as a politician, but he turned out to have a real skill at it, speaking calmly and with real control, taking over the conversations. Fury wasn't smooth, and he wasn't passionate. He simply spoke in a way that demanded attention. Fury still managed to get annoyed when a woman named Senator Ellen Nadir once again tried to intrude on the discussion. Granted, ever since the politicians of the countries invited to the discussion were informed of the change, a few controversial suggestions had been brought up. One man even requesting that the Avenger be put on call to put down political dissidents. But Ellen Nadir was a special sort of obsessed. She was glaring out from one of the hollow screens and had once again interrupted the discussion. Senator Nadir, Fury said, for the last time, Dial and Thor are not simple aliens. They are allies, as are the Asgardians. Hell, Dial is 100% human and simply uses technology that turns him into aliens. Now I have plans to begin equipping our forces to combat any extraterrestrial threats that come knocking on our doorstep again. How can you do that when you invite the aliens to join your ranks? Nadir said firmly, the young Indian-American woman frowning. We can't simply expect them to see our people as being as important as their own. Dial is human, Steve reminded her, and Thor helped us against a problem his brother caused, Nadir said angrily. Dial can only barely be considered human since he apparently changes his species the way the rest of us change shirts. How can we be assured he will stay our ally? What if one day Asgard decides we might be worth invading? What if, when we need our most powerful allies, we've already driven them away? Steve said, rising up to eye her. Senator Nadir, these questions you're asking come from fear, and it's understandable to feel that fear. But Thor is not just an alien. He is my friend and ally, someone who put their life on the line when they could have walked away. Thor has done it 3 times, in fact, including the time when he brought the Dark Elves, Nadir scowled. No, he didn't, Coulson said, drawing the attention of the room. The Dark Elves were coming all along. Thor helped stop them. That situation is not proof for your argument. It's the proof against it. When an alien enemy came to attack our world, an alien ally came to our defense, as did some of our world's best scientists. Victoria Hand nodded. And let us not forget, a massive portion of the meeting has been dedicated to making sure this new organization can defend the Earth even from Asgardian. The world's best scientists, engineers, and tacticians will be working around the clock to develop the tools and the people to stop the threat. Nadir shook her head. I still disagree with the idea that we do anything to teach and protect powered individuals. What if, by harboring and protecting them, we only give them the outlet to become our new rulers? First, we work to prevent that very thing, Fury said. Second, we take them down if we can't. And if Thor decided to do it, Nadir asked, what if the god of thunder decided to become our god once more? Can we simply decide it won't happen? Steve shook his head. Not at all. But in the end, we aren't dealing with that sort of situation. The men and women we are currently at war with are all humans. Sure, they are using alien technology like the Chitteriyama or empowered individuals like Davida or Creel, but the masterminds are human. We need to accept that the issue of who to trust must be seen on a case-by-case basis, not based on where they were born or how they are different. Yes, they may be a threat, but immediately assuming they are is a mistake that could cost valuable allies. Nadir shook her head and seemed to prepare to attack once more. Steve smiled on the outside and groaned on the inside. He really was not made for politics. Mahmoud Shah-Dial. Tony Stark's lab, Skye said later, staring around with wide eyes. We stood side by side, looking around at a place I'd only ever seen in comic books and cartoons. She looked at me. You know, I tried visiting the tower before? Really? I asked, surprised. Well, I didn't get a guided tour or anything, Skye admitted. I mostly stood outside in I grinned at the harried look she gave me at her near admittance. According to Happy, the whole top floors of the tower were dedicated to the Avengers. The place we'd left behind was the lounge area. The lab we stood in now was Tony's, with another for Bruce and one more for guest scientists and researchers. Fitz and Simmons were walking around with a look of absolute glee in their eyes as Skye, Happy, and I watched them. There were pieces of armor and robotics everywhere, a couple of fancy-looking cars in the back, and a main table in the center. More importantly, however, were the dozens of broken Iron Man suits surrounding us. How did he make so many? Fisk asked, amazed as he looked at one helmet that kind of reminded me of the Hulkbuster. But where the Hulkbuster suit was red, this helmet was silver and blue. That plus the tears and rips where it had been blown all to hell. And why? Tony kind of went through a phase, Happy said. He ended up making around 30 of them. Damn, Skye walked up to one of them. And he just destroyed them all? Like I said, he went through a phase, Happy looked at me. Any idea what he wanted you to do? I know what I want to do, I admitted, thinking of Pepper and her comic book counterpart. Although we have to wait. What did he need to talk to Pepper and Bruce about? Happy asked me as Simmons leaned over to look at the remains of a chest plate. Agent Phil Coulson is alive, I stated with some hesitance. Happy's eyes widened. He seemed to understand the meaning behind that, based on the way his mouth opened and closed like a goldfish's. Finally, he sighed. I miss when the world made sense. That day never existed, I said sadly. The multiverse was always crazy. We just had ignorance protecting us before. People walking into the room took my attention. I looked at Tony, Pepper, and Bruce as they walked in. Clint didn't join, and I wondered briefly where he had gone. Everything all right? I asked with some concern. Pepper's eyes were red, and she clenched a napkin in an angry fist, but she managed a hesitant smile. Yeah, everything's okay. Tony sighed. Okay, fanboy, come with me. Bruce, show the nerd crew what we've got, will you? On it, Bruce stepped forward as I followed Tony, Pepper staying behind. Tony led me to an elevator and waited until we'd gone down a couple of floors before speaking. The first time I killed someone was in a cave. I leaned against the wall of the elevator. I did it using my power suit, the first one. I try not to let it bother me. I killed a lot more people afterward, guys, who deserved it, and I look for distractions all the time. Sometimes, though, you need help. I sighed. I thought maybe if I could help Coulson's team, maybe I'd also distract myself. Yeah, you weren't exactly subtle about it, Tony said. I wouldn't suggest talking to Bruce about it, though. I tried, but he just falls asleep. Bruce is a therapist? I asked, confused. I mean, considering the green elephant in the room? No, he isn't. Tony scowled. He falls asleep when he tries. But, I have a good one. On retainer. I'm planning to hire other ones. Coulson recommended a guy, so if you need one, let me know. I nodded. Thanks, Tony.
He smiled.
Well, don't thank me now. I'm only using you for your brains. I laughed as the doors opened. Come on, I'll show you your room. I get a room? I asked, surprised. You did say you were homeless. Pepper pushed you to do this, right? I can do things without my girlfriend pushing me. Anyways, we'll go back upstairs afterward. The elevator opened and we walked out into the hallway. When we got to the room that Tony had offered me, we found a surprise. Barton? Tony asked. Clint Barton was sitting on a couch in front of a TV playing video games. Some kind of Grand Theft Auto clone based on the fact he was being chased by the army. He looked up and smiled at us. Hey guys. Don't hey guys me, Tony said, annoyed. Get your feet off that table. It's worth more than decades of your salary. You haven't seen my salary. Clint put his feet down and kept playing the game. So you're giving the kid a room? How did you know that? I asked, confused. He just told me 5 seconds ago. Spy, Clint said, pointing at himself. Tony scowled. Yes, I am. But you ruined it. Tony took my arm and pulled me away. Jarvis, check the room for bugs and let me know next time Clint does something sneaky. Yes, sir, Jarvis said. Fanboy, delete his save games as soon as you can. Fine by me, Clint said, sounding immensely frustrated. Why the hell is the army chasing me in a fishing game? It's immersive, Tony yelled back. You seem to get angry at them a lot, I noted. Clint and Coulson. I mean, whenever they do the spy stuff. Tony smirked, leading me back to the elevator. Well, yeah, I mean, it's part of their charm, sure, but I'm still going to call them out on it. The elevator went up, and Tony stood in silence with me for a bit. At a guess he was thinking. Finally he spoke as the door to the elevators opened. I've been thinking about what you said. Tony stepped out, walking slowly, and I matched his pace, about how you were patrolling New York. I think that's a good idea to make a thing for Avengers. Having people with powers on the street, keeping people safe. It could go a long way to making the average person more comfortable with, what was the word you used, metahuman. I nodded. I'll have to mention it to Steve and Fury. When we walked back into the room, Pepper was speaking with Skye and Happy, smiling a bit. Fitzsimmons and Bruce were at a computer, where I could see what looked like some sort of blueprints for a taser displayed. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the show is about to begin, Tony said dramatically, waved at all the pieces of armor in the lab. Okay, fanboy, I want you to make armor while I record you working. What, out of all this? I asked, surprised at Tony Stark letting anyone near his armor tech, even scraps of it. Why do you think I pulled these out of storage? Just make something, and I'll be able to see how much of what Jury Rig does is him being smart and him using some kind of superpowers.
I thought about that.
In truth, my understanding of Jury Rig, my experience when I turned into him, told me that he didn't work that way. Jury Rig was just a smart, stubborn son of a bitch. But hell, if Tony needed proof. Okay, I raised the Omnitrix and began to twist the dial. The holograms of my aliens popped up. I scrolled past Wildmutt, Wrath, Diamond Head, Swampfire, and Feedback, finally getting to Jury Rig. So that's what that looks like, Bruce said, stepping closer to look. And the names, are those affectations or translations of the species' actual word for themselves? Affectations, I said, pressing down on the dial. Oh, that's too bad, Bruce said, disappointment on his face as my body was surrounded by green light. because it might have revealed something about them culturally. Ha! Shorter than I expected. I grinned up at everyone, Pepper blinking at me next to Bruce. Tony, is that? Pepper began to say. Yeah, my Black Sabbath shirt, Tony said, surprising me. I'd wondered since my first transformation why I was wearing a regular shirt and jeans rather than the aviator gear Jury Rig was known to wear. Why would an alien have a Black Sabbath shirt? Bruce asked, confused. I think because Tony wears it, I said without thinking. The three looked down at me, Tony confused. Me? Well, it would make sense. According to the mental memories given to me by the Omnitrix, I, that is to say, Jury Rig, am one of a few aliens affected by the unconscious perceptions of the wearer. I stated wisely, Tony Stark is known culturally as a sort of mad scientist, a person who makes incredible inventions, and so, despite my clear closeness in appearance to the common traditional design for gremlins, I instead wore the clothing of the person most closely associated with engineering of a spectacular nature. All of which was half a guess on my part, half a lie, but it worked as an explanation. Well, he's more eloquent than he looks, Pepper said. Thank you, I said, my red cheeks somehow getting redder as I looked up at Pepper, who smiled. Let's put a pin in that, Tony said, looking around the lab. Jarvis, you recording? Of course, sir, Jarvis said diligently. All right, Mini-Me, go make something. Right. I ran over to the suits and robotic parts. Disassemble, disassemble, I shouted gleefully, running between Sky's legs as she came over to see what the fuzz was all about. Sky yelped in shock, staring after me as I climbed onto a table and grabbed a helmet that was in pretty condition.
What was that?
I'm Jury Rig, I shouted back, leaping onto another table. I grinned at Simmons as she stared at me askance. I don't know why, but both Simmons and Pepper were suddenly more interesting now. Actually, looking over at Fitz and Tony, I could guess why. I grabbed a bunch of pieces of gauntlets, gloves, a couple of chest plates, all the servos I could grab. I knew what I had to make, and in many ways I had a perfect blueprint in mind, thanks to comics. Jury Rig wanted to do more than just make armor, and they say inspiration should be followed. I ran over to Pepper and stared at her for a moment. She blinked at me as I put my hands into a frame, taking a good look at her. I ignored her confusion to run back to the parts I had gathered. I need an arc reactor. Okay, Tony walked over to a table and tossed one over to me after a bit of searching. You just have extra arc reactors lying around? Fitz asked, sounding amazed. What, you want one? Tony threw another one to Fitz, who yelped, catching it. They're older models for back when I needed one for my heart. Thanks for bringing them over, Happy. I ignored the background noise of Happy responding. Let's see. I wanted it to be able to separate into different sections. A neural link, naturally attuned to her magnets. No, too primitive. So maybe... I tapped the Omnitrix symbol and changed into upgrade. I merged with the pieces I'd made and started in on the adjustments. The pieces couldn't just mash together. They had to be adaptive. I separated from them and looked at the armor I'd been making for a moment. Kid? Tony asked, walking over. What exactly are you up to? Almost done, I said, tapping the Omnitrix and turning back into Jury Rig. I opened my mouth and bit down onto a section of chest plate, tearing it off so I could bend it in a different direction. I took some of the wires and twisted them into the arc reactor. Then I moved the repulsors into their positions and turned into upgrade again. While I could do impressive things as Jury Rig, upgrade let me make changes at an even more precise level. I hadn't really thought about combining them this way until now, but something about working with Tony's armor made my mind buzz with inspiration. One more second. I poured into the gauntlets and the repulsors, and further refined them. I left and turned back into Jury Rig. With a squeal of metal, I twisted the helmet, face mask into shape, then yelled to the ceiling, X, Jarvis, install a basic version of Tony's armor software, please. Right away, sir, Jarvis said. On it, X agreed. Tony, Fitz, can you two help me? I asked. Fitz looked at Tony, who waved for him to join me. Yes, of course. As they leaned down to the floor to join me, I showed them where I needed them. Here and here, you see? Start putting them in place. Oh, okay, so that the armor is connected wirelessly, Fitz said. Oh, that's brilliant. I know, right? Tony said, apparently forgetting in all the excitement that he was supposed to just be watching me. Soon the two were moving the pieces of armor I'd made into place, following the connections. As I watched, they actually made some adjustments that I hadn't thought of. Interesting. Okay, only activate them on my say, please. I hopped away and ran over to a computer. Sky, Simmons. The two ran over to join me, Sky taking me under the armpits and helping me get on the table when I struggled to hop onto it. Okay, Sky, I said, pointing at the screen. Axe a mere portion of right that. Axe flashed the code I was thinking of. Can you clean that up a bit? What? Some code I've never seen before? Sky leaned forward to look at it. No? Wait. This is familiar. I think if I... She trailed off, typing frantically at the computer. Jarvis, can you show me the blood work and medical history? I asked. On, that one. As I pointed at a computer, it turned on. Come on, I said to Simmons, the young woman following next to me as I ran along the tables. Okay, can you make sure that these two match up well? I asked. I don't want to make a mistake. Simmons leaned over and blinked at what she read, focusing on one bit in particular. Extremis virus. I don't want to activate it, I explained. I know it was removed, but if there is any chance... Professor Banner, Simmons said, understanding in an instant. Can you look at this as well? Of course, Bruce ran over and checked the computer, putting on his glasses. Oh, I see what he's doing, Tony mumbled, looking at the confused Happy and Pepper. All good, Sky said, looking over at me as I hopped off the table to join Tony and Fitz.
I don't think there should be anything wrong, Bruce said, looking over at us.
I concur with Professor Banner's assessment, Simmons said, squealing a moment later. I always wanted to say that. Okay, one last thing. I tapped the Omnitrix. In seconds, I stood tall, my skin inky black, a pair of tendrils popping out of my head, ending in plugs. Feedback, I cried proudly. All the pieces were in place. Jury Rig was smart, but he wasn't precise when it came to software, and had no experience in biology, so Sky, Jarvis, and Axe helped with the software I needed, and Simmons and Bruce made sure the biological aspect wouldn't clash with my tech. Upgrade was very good at smoothing the rough edges of Jury Rig's tech, but Tony and Fitz would be able to replicate it afterward if they were involved in the process. I could see them putting pieces into place, and got ready for my final part. Okay, Fitz. Tony, Jarvis, X. On one, I raised my hands up and sucked out the power of the arc reactor in the chest plate. Blue power flowed into me in constant waves, and I could feel the device begin to fight me. Tony and Fitz tensed their fingers against the armor. 2, I held my breath, then fired the energy back. 3. With a shout, Tony and Fitz pressed down on the armor, completing the last connections that needed to be made. Jarvis and X uploaded the software, and the whole thing began to come together as I poured energy into the suit. Yarg! I yelled, putting more and more into it. Tony and Fitz stepped back from the jerking suit, both staring at it. Finally I stopped, tapping the Omnitrix to run over to look at the armor as Jury Rig. I inspected it with a critical eye. Everyone walked over to join me. It's female? Happy asked. Only for design purposes, I admitted. The suit I'd made was primarily red, but it had some sections of black that were running with green circuitry. It was tall but thinner than Tony or Rhodey's suits. The arc reactor rested in the chest glowing blue, but as we watched, a thick piece of steel snapped over the arc reactor. The whole suit shrank into a more compact form, ready to attach to the wearer in a moment. Do you like it? I asked Pepper. Everyone looked at her. She stared back uncomprehending, before realizing what was going on. What? She said, staring down at me. Do you like it? I asked bashfully. It should fit really well. You made that for me? Pepper looked around, shocked. Whoa, no. I don't want armor. I'm not a superhero. Huh? I asked. It's not to fight in. I mean, you can if you want, but I made it so you can fly. Pepper stilled at that. Fly. Yeah. It'll still protect you, but this way you can fly with Tony whenever you want. Seriously, why was I acting like this? Tony. Pepper frowned at her boyfriend. If this is because of you. Hey, this is all him, Tony said, waving at me. I told him to make armor. I didn't expect all this. Pepper glared a moment longer. Honest. She looked back at me. I sighed. Don't you want to at least try? It's probably the best thing I've ever made, except for the dimensional viewer, of course. Pepper just huffed, rubbing the bridge of her nose. I mean, look, I've had a hell of a day. The last bit of her sentence was said very quietly, with a hint of sadness. I'm just having trouble processing this. Tony rose up and walked over to her. They whispered fiercely for a moment. Happy joining in, then Bruce, the four spoke quickly, and eventually I heard Natasha's voice, just barely, amongst the group coming from Tony's comm unit. After about 5 minutes of speaking to those she was closest to, Pepper turned to look at me. So, she said, still hesitant. How do I put it on? Just think about it. Slowly, I said. Think about it slowly, Pepper asked. As she spoke, a gauntlet rose from the floor. The red and black armor piece floated gently over to her as everyone watched. Pepper raised a hand and watched the gauntlet calmly move over to it. The armor pieces shifting to move around her fingers, wrist and forearm. With a click, the final part of the gauntlet moved over her shoulder. She blinked at it. Oh, wow. This doesn't feel like the last time. It's almost nice. Sky input the program to incorporate the medical data Bruce and Simmons put in, I explained. Okay, try the rest. But think, slowly. That's important, Tony said with a wince. Seriously, you don't want a piece of armor flying into you in a sensitive spot. Experience? Sky asked mischievously. Shh, Pepper said, frowning. I'm concentrating. She exclaimed in excitement when a leg of the armor flew over to her. She blinked, looking down at her dress. Wait, what about my clothes? Oh, never mind. The leg moved around her heel, then over her hip, leaving the dress and shoe intact. The next leg did the same. I figured you might want to wear it on the fly, I explained. I just used an upgraded version of the technology Tony uses so he can wear a tuxedo under the suit. I always wondered about that, Bruce mumbled. Pepper yelped in surprise when the chest plate attached, giggling slightly. It's cold. Then the helmet rose up, floating over to her hands. She took it and raised the helmet to gaze into its eyes. She looked over at Tony, who looked proud enough to burst, and blushed. Something about seeing Tony and Pepper happy, as they looked at each other, made Jury-Rig grin as well. Pepper raised the helmet up and lowered it over her head. The faceplate snapped down over her, and she looked around. So, how do I look? She asked in a slightly modified voice. She was the tallest in the room now, towering over all of us. The red and black design of her suit gave a somber, impressive look. I'd chosen not to give her the boob plate that most comic book power suits for women seemed to insist on, instead of making her chest plate with a series of interlocking plates for flexibility. Tony and Fitz had done well to make sure each piece fits smoothly. Hi, this may be the sexiest thing I've ever seen, Tony said, uncaring of the looks everyone gave him. How does it feel? Any issues? I feel, Pepper turned her hand over, watching her red and black fingers wiggle. I feel powerful. It's like it's a part of me. I tapped my Omnitrix and became human again. I grinned at Pepper. Want to take it for a spin? I asked. We can fly. Is that safe? She asked hesitantly. Jarvis, what can you tell us? Tony asked. Safe? Miss Potts is safe, Jarvis said immediately. While the method of its making is unorthodox, the suit has no issues to worry about. I'd argue it has more to protect her from harm than even your latest suits, Mr. Stark. Give me time, Tony mumbled, clearly unworried. Jarvis, send me the Mark 43. What do you say? The faceplate on Tony's armor closed over his face. Want to go for a test flight? On its way, sir. Jarvis's pronouncement was followed by the suit flying over before landing and walking over to Tony. Tony opened his arms wide and the suit opened to accept him. Pepper looked over her hands. Well, it's tempting. Come on, I shouted, running towards the balcony outside. The others followed. Pepper was moving very smoothly in her armor and soon was striding with confidence. We all stood together, Sky moving to watch with me as Tony began to guide Pepper in her first attempts at flight. "So, when do I get a suit?" she asked with a grin. Sky's grin fell. "Seriously?" I smirked at her. "Stick around. I'll even let you pick the color scheme." "Seriously? You want a suit? I can make you one." I looked down at the Omnitrix. "I've been holding back too long on what I can do. So, as S.H.I.E.L.D. I think it's time we make real headway on changing the world, and part of that is giving it some sweet toys." Pepper yelped, bring our attention to her. She was laughing as Tony guided her to float with her rocket boots, using the hand repulsors to stabilize. Bruce shouted something to her, and Pepper laughed back as Fitzsimmons watched, happy, worried, but also smiling. Soon, Tony and Pepper were rising up together. "Come on, baby bird, you got this," Tony teased. "You can't tell me you haven't been jealous of me doing this." Pepper floated a little higher. "How can I be jealous when you've crashed every single time you've ever flown?" "Any crash you can walk away from is a landing," Tony said in response. "Hey, fanboy, let's go. I'm needed elsewhere." I gave Sky a grin. "Catch you later." I twisted the Omnitrix and leaped forward off the balcony as wings sprouted on my back. Astrodactyl! With a loud squawk, I flew to join them with a blast of green energy. Pepper, startled, backed away slightly. "How many of those can you turn into?" she asked. Her impassive face mask pointed at me. "Who cares?" Tony asked, spinning in the air. "Come on, let's see New York in style. How do you feel?" I called out to her after a bit. Pepper hesitantly followed, and I joined them. It was slow going at first. Pepper went slowly, ungainly, trying to figure things out. Tony and I stayed with her, Tony taunting her slightly, yet somehow comforting her at the same time. We flew over to the west, moving slowly, but as time went on, Pepper began to speed up. She flew upwards, then slowly moved from side to side, mimicking Tony's movements. Soon, she was moving faster. We passed by buildings, people below pointing up and photographing us. "This is amazing," Pepper called back, laughing. "Come on, let's pick up the pace," Tony said, his repulsors lighting up before he shot forward, passing over Central Park. Pepper wasn't as quick to simply boost forward, but soon she and Tony were flying as fast as they could. I watched the pair fly together, then went in my own direction. It was their time to enjoy. Instead, I flew towards the Empire State Building to try something I'd done a few times. I soared to the top of the former tallest building in the world and pulled in my wings when I got to the spire. I landed against it, clenching my clawed feet and hands against it. With my powerful eyes, I could track Pepper and Tony flying through the city and watched them for a moment before looking around some more. Then I saw a man on a street thousands of feet below getting mugged by another guy. With a smile, I dived off the Empire State Building and fired my green rockets to blast towards the crime in progress. It was funny. In many ways, I was right back where I'd started, in the middle of New York City, stopping muggings, but I was also a whole lot further ahead. Changing in mid-air as I came up to the mugging, I howled my battle cry, laughing within at the sound and smell of the mugger's fear. Then Wild Mutt was pushing him to the ground, and it was business as usual from there. January 14th. He shuddered, and I could see he was visibly holding back his disgust. I didn't take it personally. In the medbay of the Insight helicarrier, I moved Sergeant Don Chapley's arm with him. Granted, I technically was his arm, but semantics, he'd lost it just a day during the attack on the S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy, and I was finally fulfilling my promise to him from that day. "How does it feel?" I asked, sprouting my head from his new bicep, the whole of his arm shining black with green circuits as usual. "I'm trying to adjust it to your nerves as you move it." "It feels like an arm," the sergeant said, moving his fingers around. "Well, it should," Bruce Banner, typing at a computer nearby. "Dial designed it to link up to your brain, to mimic things like pressure, heat, touch, everything you need." Bruce finished typing and looked at the soldier. "But it should also be capable of more than your normal arm." "Like what?" the soldier asked, watching with a fascinated disgust as I flowed off his arm and turned into a human again. His arm was now shaped like one of the Iron Man suit's arms. I frowned when the soldier gave me a dissatisfied look. I couldn't exactly blame him, though. If I'd lost my arm, I'd probably want it back. Not a robot version, just my arm, whole again. Well, do you want us to? Superhuman strength when you want it, I said, watching as he clenched his fist. It's also tougher and can be installed with options if you want. I know it's not perfect, but I promise I'll keep working on the project. He clenched the new fist and sat down in his bed, staring at it. Leave me alone, please. Bruce and I shared a glance. Bruce adjusted his glasses and moved to the door, me following a moment later. Have a pleasant day, Sergeant Chapel. Thanks, the soldier said dismissively. I sighed sadly, looking at Bruce as we walked through the halls. You get that reaction a lot. Usually when people find out who I am, Bruce said. I noted that a lot of people were giving the two of us a wide berth. But he just needs time. A therapist will be speaking to him soon. Hopefully that will help him. Okay, so what was it you wanted to talk to me about? I asked Bruce. He stared at the Omnitrix. There are a few things, but they can wait until after this is over. Together we went to the locker rooms. We had around 20 minutes left. I took out the clothes I'd prepared and quickly changed. A black business suit with a blue button-up shirt. Bruce went for grey. Once done, we walked outside. Any idea what my role is in all of this? Bruce asked me awkwardly. Hell if I know, I admitted. I just know that we're supposed to be there. At least you're actually an Avenger. Hulk is the Avenger, Bruce said bitterly. Not me, I'm just the guy who hangs around until they call a code green. I looked at him. This wasn't a Bruce who'd found peace with the Hulk. This wasn't a Bruce who had gone Planet Hulk, then World War Hulk, making a massive journey to some sort of agreement between the two. But how was I supposed to tell the two that they could find that equilibrium? You know, I started to say as we walked. Hey fellas, Natasha interrupted. Bruce and I looked up to see her smiling down the hall, wearing a very professional-looking suit that somehow still made her look stunning. You're late. We are, Bruce asked, worried. Natasha smiled gently, moving forward to stand behind us and walking with us. It's an Avengers meeting, people came early. And now they're wondering where we all are. Who else is there? I asked. Clint showed up. Steve never left. Natasha scoffed. Of all the uses for the super soldier serum, being able to outlast everyone else in a meeting is not one I think they had in mind. Useful for us, though, I looked at her. Anything we should worry about? Some of the senators who stepped in tried to really hammer down on the idea of powered individuals, Natasha said. Others wanted you two put in prison. What? I yelled, noticing Bruce didn't seem surprised. You both scare people. You seem to be able to do whatever you want, and Bruce hasn't been stopped by anything before. God damn it, I mumbled. Cooler heads prevailed, Natasha explained. But still, the guidelines are especially harsh on certain crimes. We still have some leeway, but we may have to ignore some of them. Is that really safe? Bruce asked, the three of us stopping in a doorway. I mean, I don't know about Dial here. He can actually control his transformations. Except Wrath, Natasha and I said in unison, sharing a surprised glance. Bruce looked between us before shrugging it off. I can only barely control the Hulk. And you saved the world with him, Natasha smiled. Don't worry, we'll figure this out. For now, she nodded towards the room beyond the doorway we'd stopped in. Go in. Bruce sighed, still not convinced, but walked inside. With a bit of trepidation, I followed. Then Natasha. The room was much the same as the last time I saw it. Nick Fury and Steve sitting with Tony, though Tony and Steve were in suits like mine now. Same with Clint, Sam and Rhodey. The various members of S.H.I.E.L.D. surrounded the table, Coulson, Hand, and Gonzalez included. But President Ellis was now actually in the room, having taken Councilperson Rockwell's seat. He gave Bruce and I a good look as we walked around the table, barely noting Natasha. Soon we were all in position. Well, Nick, President Ellis said, we're all here. Fury nodded, steepling his fingers. Very well. First off, I believe we have the discussion of the new name for the organization. This is the least important item on the agenda, so I want to get it out of the way. Some of the suggestions have been, Fury flickered his eyes over to Tony, colorful to say the least. Actually, Nick, President Ellis said, I believe I'd like us to appoint a new head first. Fury cocked an eyebrow. Yes, Ellis smiled. And to start, I'd like to nominate General Thaddeus Ross. Bruce almost choked. Absolutely not, Tony said firmly. Are you kidding me? President Ellis frowned. Thaddeus Ross has been a loyal soldier, and a good man that I agree with Mr. Stark, Steve said firmly. General Ross has been hunting one of our team members for years. More importantly, putting a leading member of the US military in charge of an international organization is in bad taste, Mr. President. Indeed, several of the people on the screens around us were frowning severely at the president. Ellis nodded after a moment, conceding the point. I nominate Maria Hill, Victoria Hand said. The older woman tapped at the tablet in front of her, and an image of Maria smiling hovered over the table. I made a note to do something about the way the hologram looked so grainy and out of focus when I had the chance, then listened to Victoria speak. She is already deputy director, so this would simply be a promotion. She knows the Avengers, has experience with working the job, and showed great leadership during the crisis we just went through. If there is anyone we can trust to do the job, it's her. Coulson, Gonzalez, and Fury gave Hand a pleased look that she returned. That may cause problems, the Russian president said. As you said, she is S.H.I.E.L.D., and the organization not being trustworthy is what caused us these very issues. I would suggest someone outside the organization. And who would we choose? The Japanese Prime Minister asked in his native language, putting up subtitles in real time. Hill-san at least has the benefit of already proving her willingness to put any nationalism aside when she worked with Fury-san and Romanov-san to guide agents around the world. Japan's S.H.I.E.L.D. forces are intact thanks to her. The Russian president shook his head. When he spoke, he chose to employ his own home language of Russian this time, apparently wishing for his words to be conveyed without his accent marring the message. We must at least consider someone else, as there are those who will consider Hill a choice made out of favoritism. Why not Captain Rogers? Steve was surprised by this. He has shown a willingness to fight against corruption, much like Hill, but he was not part of the organization. In addition, he is a known and trusted figure across the world. The Russian president frowned. Of course, his codename does have something to be desired. I disagree, Fury said. When Steve looked at him, Fury gave him a level look. The organization being run by someone with abilities, even ones as simple as Captain Rogers, won't be seen as a good thing. If he becomes the leader, a lot of people will yell about a powered individual taking a position so high in the world's government. I nominate him nonetheless, the Russian president said. What a world where a Russian leader nominated Captain America for a major leadership role. What about a member of the council? The Chinese president asked. Councilman Yan has served the world faithfully. As the politician spoke, trading barbs a little bit, I kept my eyes on one screen in particular. It was almost forgotten in the flow of important nations speaking about the issue of leadership. The man on the screen was African, with grey hair and a very nice beard. His left eye was slightly misshapen, possibly due to an old injury, but he had a calm demeanor about him. He hadn't spoken much, according to Natasha, who'd seemed surprised when I'd asked about him, but then I knew more than most about his nation. After all, I'd been the one who'd requested they be included in the conversation. What about you, King T'Chaka? I asked suddenly. Does the nation of Wakanda have anyone they wish to suggest? Everyone stopped confusion in the room. Fury gave me an odd look. King T'Chaka seemed surprised, but I noted that his focus seemed laser-sharp on me. I agree with the nomination of Ms. Hill, T'Chaka said with a smile. I didn't believe, but I would like to hear the other candidates before making a vote. I'd love to hear your opinions. I said, Wakanda's place on the world stage is important after all. I heard some chuckles. People believed that I was throwing shade, but T'Chaka knew better. We met eyes across thousands of miles, thanks to the wonder of modern technology. Soon, the other delegates began to throw other nominees. Natasha pulled at my arm, and I looked at her. She shook her head, a question in her eyes. I didn't reply. The discussion lasted an hour, but T'Chaka kept panning his eyes to meet mine. I only nodded every time he did. Wakanda, aka the most secretly advanced nation on Earth. couldn't simply stand on the sidelines. Not anymore. I didn't know why I felt so strongly about this, but something seemed to scream it within me. A voice, as powerful as a siren. You were wrong to turn your backs on the rest of the world. In the end, the leader was voted on and chosen, and so the only thing left was the name. Now, there are some names that were suggested that are going to be discarded immediately, Fury said. Why, what's wrong with them? Tony asked innocently. Well, let's see. Fury tapped at his tablet, and the list of names floated before us. Cyclops, with an I. Counter-Terrorism Initiative Center, led by one-eyed professional super spy. I fail to see the issue, Tony said with a grin. Me either, Clint said, smiling when Fury gave him a level look. I still want Arrow. What was wrong with S.H.I.E.L.D.? Steve asked. The leaders of nations gave him a look, and Coulson smiled. That's going to be shifted to be given to a team, Fury said, looking at Coulson. The rest of organization will be something else. There were some professional names suggested, the British Prime Minister said. MRT for the Metahuman Response Team, or the Metahuman Centralized Utilization. I frowned at the last one, but shook my head. I would suggest the GGG, Tony said. Government Goon Gallery? Natasha asked. Tony smirked. Can we please remove Mr. Stark if he won't deign to be serious? The Russian president asked sourly. I have to agree, President Ellis said. Mr. Stark, please show this decision the respect it deserves. This organization will be working on the behalf of the world in everything from battle to negotiations with extraterrestrial nations. At the least, the name must carry the gravitas that the organization has. I blinked at the seriousness everyone seemed to be giving the name. After all, I already knew that whatever the name, smaller subdivisions would be created within the new organization. But I suppose that he was partially right. There had to be a name the public would know they could trust. Names have power, after all. Did someone suggest Smash? Bruce asked, adjusting his glasses as he stared at one of the suggestions. Tony smiled. As I said, Fury began deleting names. Many of these were done as some sort of joke, so all of those will be removed. BOE DPS, Luzays, Gasp, Wand, Fubar, Clowns, Steak, Jam, Ghastly, all gone. Some nerdy-looking S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel seemed a bit disappointed at those. I believe armor and sword will remain in the capacity they have before, Fury continued. Dial should be removed, the Japanese Prime Minister said. Considering the fact you have a hero with that exact name joining you, such favoritism is in bad taste. Too bad, Sam told me jokingly. I didn't suggest it, I said back. Plumber was mine. Wait, really? Sam whispered. Who? Rhodey stepped forward and nodded towards a grinning Tony. Who do you think? Sam smiled, then looked at me. Plumber, really? You had to be there, was all I said. Otway, CIA, and USA are all taken, Fury said. So that leaves these one. With the last beep, the final list floated before us all. MRT and MCU were on it, as well as some new ones. Seychelles, SEC, or the Central Liaison for Extra-Human Responsibility and Information Collection was first. Seca Stasi, that showed up twice, one version reading as Committee of Advanced Strategy, Technology and Law Enforcement, the other reading as Central Agency of Special Tactics, Logistics and Enforcement. The last one surprised me. Whose suggestion was that one? I don't remember that. 9, Stephen Fury said in unison. BRIG, which became the Bureau of Reconnaissance, Intelligence Development and General Enhancement. Why Bridge? Natasha asked. Steve and Fury shared a look before Steve spoke. What was it Mauad said all those days ago? S.H.I.E.L.D. is supposed to be the bridge between what people consider normal and all the weirdness out there, and he was right. This is what we need to be. Even though Steve was speaking to the Avengers, the whole room was listening calmly. Steve just had that sort of presence. We will guard the world, protect it, but we can't simply pretend that all the strange things beyond don't exist. We will help humanity advance to fight it back and join it. It's the name I think best represents that. Steve looked around. I humbly submit that we put it to a vote, but mine will be for Bridge. The whole room looked around. Tablets were passed to those who had none, including me. I stared at the list for a minute. I knew what I was going to pick now. I'd had no idea my little speech had had such an effect. Feeling hopeful, I hit my vote across the world. People from all walks of life did the same. Soon, the name was chosen, winning with 56.2% of the votes. With that, Bridge was formed. Now that our new super-secret spy organization had a name, some guidelines, and a solid R&D department, we sat for a couple of hours more listening to some more stuff. One of the new initiatives was interesting, built around equipping teams with actual power armor and weapons, with newly upgraded Quinjets. The Insight helicarriers would become the backbone of this new initiative, though the algorithm was agreed to be destroyed. I didn't say anything when that was mentioned. The idea was that these soldiers would be capable of mobilizing in parts of the world metahuman forces might not be able to get to in time. A roving army. A couple of the signatories balked at this, horrified at the idea of this army possibly being used to attack others. But the point of the army was that it would be international. Anyone who volunteered would be trained and equipped to fight the good fight. There were still objections, and a couple countries refused to accept. But overall, things for the metahuman response team was a go. As well as one of my suggestions, a man with the name Frank, I'd found among the files of exceptional soldiers. There were more, people who had popped out to me, but he was an obvious pick. Hopefully I could nip that timeline in the bud, maybe not completely. He was, in the end, a soldier no matter what, but maybe I could help him find peace. Then one of my other proposals was brought up. A planetary defense shield. President Ellis asked, looking up at me, "Is this for real?" "Deadly," I said, stepping forward. "Iron Man, and I believe it's possible, as do Professor Banner and a Dr. Leopold Fitz. A shield that we can erect around the planet. It would be supplemented by Mac weaponry." "Excuse me," the British Prime Minister interrupted, "but the Outer Space Treaty prevents such things. You start talking about this, and Shupus will lose their bloody minds," he said firmly, referencing the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. "The shield would prevent any nation from using the big guns on the Earth at all," Tony mentioned, "and these would be based on conventional weapons. If people are still whining about letting us shoot any alien enemies that attack us, then we can just stick with a force field and some cool spaceships." "Spaceships?" Gonzalez asked, the older man's eyes narrowing behind his glasses. "Yep," I said. "1 or 2 to start. We're looking into working with NASA and other space programs. Later on, I believe Russia and China mentioned they were interested." Both leaders nodded. "Hopefully we'll be bringing in their astronauts and astrophysicists." There were a bunch of points during the meeting where everyone had to stop for a moment to think, when we all realized, just for a moment, that this meeting was changing the world. Even Senator Nadir, who had been glaring at Bruce and me for most of the meeting, seemed dumbstruck. "Okay," President Ellis said, just as thoughtful as the rest. "I have more news. The documents have come through, and we've been given permission on the matter of the prisoners after some taps at a computer." Steve and my tablets beeped. "I believe you both requested to give the good news?" Steve's smile made several people blush at the sheer joy in it. "Mahmood, 1 second, please." On my way through the halls with Steve, Bruce called out to me. I stopped to look at him. Steve stopped as well, and we watched Bruce run over to us. He looked at Steve hesitantly. Steve, I don't want to be rude." "You want to speak to him alone," Steve said quickly. "I understand. I'll just go ahead." As much as Steve was trying not to seem like it, he clearly wished to hurry. He did a jog that was faster than most people's full-on sprint, and soon disappeared.
"Oh," Bruce said, noting the speed of Steve's disappearance. He looked at me, then around. "Here, in this room," Bruce opened a random door, and we entered into what looked one of many maintenance rooms. A few bridge agents were inside. They looked at us when we entered. "Guys," I said as they looked at us, "can we get a couple minutes?" They stared at us for a moment, then got up from their stations and hurriedly left. Bruce waited for a minute, then focused on me.
Tony told me that you were able to open a window into other worlds. I frowned. He was supposed to keep that secret. Only Avengers can know, Bruce reminded me. I'm an Avenger, for better or worse, he rubbed his hands together nervously. I just have to know, is there a universe where I cure myself, where I get rid of the Hulk? Infinite possibilities, Doctor. You know what that means.
Hope.
I know people talk about it as an emotion you can show on your face, but it wasn't until then that I truly understood what that meant. So you know how to cure me? I saw some worlds where you were cured, I admitted. But sometimes it wasn't for long. People have siphoned the radiation from you, split you and Hulk into different beings. It's even gone away on its own. In one universe, you sent him to hell. What? Real hell? Bruce asked, surprised. Yes, but he always comes back, Bruce growled. I blinked when his voice was a couple octaves deeper and noted the greenness in the veins on his neck. Not much, but I was looking for it. So he was about to hulkify. Funny. Anyone else would have been scared. I think. I was mostly curious. Bruce noticed me looking at him with interest and calmed down. Sorry, don't be. There is a successful way to deal with the Hulk, though. It's actually the one that has worked best.
What was it?
Bruce asked, his focus actually kinda scary. Learning to work with him, I explained. That way, no matter what happens, you both can handle it. He scowled. I've tried that. I've tried to control him for years. It's not about control, I said. It's about teamwork. It's about both of you realizing what you have in common and working with it. Bruce looked at me as though I'd suggested he swallow battery acid. You're kidding, he said softly, before raising his voice. That's crazy. He doesn't work like that. And neither do you, I noted. Or so I bet he'd say. Bruce scowled. Look, I can try to siphon your energy as one of my aliens or make a device to do it. I can try to separate you somehow, and I think there's a good chance something Jury Rig makes will help. But in the end, the one thing that works every time depends on two people finding a way to make peace, to fight together and work together. Bruce was shaking his head even as I spoke. With a sigh, I rubbed my forehead. Just think about. I stopped when he shook his head faster. Fine. Just tell me when you make a decision on, hell, I'll help make Veronica. Bruce stopped shaking his head and stared at me. Yeah, I know about that. Tony probably planned out this conversation. Seriously, people act like he's an impulsive idiot, but all those fake names he made up helped Fury narrow down the list. Him telling me about Veronica made me think about ways to help you, and telling you about the dimensional viewer led to you coming to me. Some would call that manipulative, Bruce noted. Some would call that helping. I turned and walked away. Let me know if you need it. Not much I could do for him. Bruce would decide for himself what to do. I'd help him however I could, and hell, Jury Rig could probably come up with some way to truly negate the Hulk, to cure Bruce. But I didn't think that was true. The Hulk was alive, because Bruce was alive as far I knew anyways. Whatever Bruce chose, I'd help.